right. Here we go. So I'll be doing introduction of the Aging Arborist podcast. Today it's going to be the episode 12, which is super cool, which means that we've come up on a year of doing this. And that was our original plan, was just roll with it for a year, see what happens. And I think we can both agree it's been an amazing journey. And we're starting to get the nice feedback, confirmation to the idea of what we wanted to do with the podcast. Cool. So obviously today is just going to be me interviewing Paul Beester. He's the originator of the podcast, number one. But number two, he usually I like to have him do the intro because he's got the voice that actually works. But today you got to listen to me. But first and foremost, let's just do a simple intro. I like to round it up. You got 40, let's just go with 40 years in the industry. You're about 34 or 35 owning your own business. Is that
about this is our 32nd year.
32nd year. Okay. So 32nd year. He's also a husband, a dad, 3 kids. I'll let you dive into the ages and everything else. He owns the tree company, Tree Awareness. Super passionate, Tai Chi practitioner, a follower of Christ. And more importantly, I loved more than anything else that he just turned 60 and he loves personal development, even at this age, which is always an inspiration because I'm a firm believer in that. But not only am I a believer, but I'm always love seeing it when I see it in older people because it gives me a path to lead towards a little bit, mentorship and stuff like that.
That's cool.
So without further ado, Paul Beester.
All right. Thanks. You know, it's funny you say that. So yesterday was the tree prep for the Jersey chapter tree climbing competition. And Bert was there. Bert Kuhn. I'm sure some of you listening know Bert. Bert gets around. Bert's been to Geezers a bunch of times. And a lot of people know Bert. He's a great person, a believer, brother. But what I just loved about it, he was up in a tree pruning. And he was on a Rope Runner Pro. And so he's older than me. He's 65. He's been around longer than me. He's been doing it longer than me. So I look at that and I find inspiration because he's still doing it. And by the way, looked pretty good up in the tree, stretching way out, 2 hands on the side, like doing his thing. It was cool. But seeing the latest piece of gear on a man that's been doing it that long, I found inspiration in that too. So, my mindset behind that is you're never done until they put me in the ground or whatever they're going to do with this vessel. When I'm done, you got to keep grinding. You got to keep moving forward. And I don't say that like, grind, man. But man, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Mm-hmm. No. And first of all, you're 100% correct on that. Let's just dive into it. Where do you think that mindset comes from?
You mean for me personally?
Yeah. Because let's be for real. You're 60, right? You've had a good life.
Sure.
By all accounts.
No, I would agree.
Up and downs, whatever, but ultimately it's a good life, right?
Yep.
That mindset, either you're born with it or you cultivate it. Which one do you think?
Man, that's a tough call because as you're saying it, I'm trying to quickly rewind time. And we on the little feature we just recorded, I talked about football. Mm-hmm. And so I was probably the first time I played organized football was a freshman in high school. So I was 14 or 15, I guess, somewhere in there. And maybe we'll get into this, maybe we won't. But like my dad was a blue collar guy, but wasn't around much. Like there's a whole story there, but with my parents or whatever. I would think, man, it must have been in me in some way, shape, or form. But I feel like from a very young age, I was trying to, not to sound dramatic, but survive. Yeah. Just based on conditions. I didn't grow up poor. I wasn't destitute, anything like that. But it was more of an emotional abandonment kind of thing. So I think it was like, okay, at a very early age, I realized I have to take care of this. I have to, I've worked since I was really young. And I can remember One of my early jobs was in a kitchen and just taking everything to the nth degree. Maybe it was me looking for validation in some way. Like if I work hard, I'll get acknowledged. It may have been as simple as that. But it was all I knew how to do was to control that effort. Because I never felt special, really. So it was like, okay, the way I can be that way or special or have some is just to control my effort, to just put out.
Yeah. So from what I'm getting at is that is like the beginning of the grind, essentially, regardless of what the root of it is. You still have the mindset of maximum effort to attain, a paycheck or position or whatever, right? The reason why I ask is because that is for the listeners that haven't paid attention to anything yet. I'll say 2012 is when we started to kind of be aware of each other.
You and I, probably, yeah,
right.
Yeah, I would say. When was your first competition?
2010.
Okay, so probably that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Couple years in.
Okay, so my point is that's our first time being aware of each other.
Yeah.
But then, like when we started like slowly connecting and talking and having conversations, that's one of the things that I loved was the energy. Not only the energy, but the conversations on what I call real stuff. Not. And again, we just talked, but not just like sports. Oh, did you see the game last night? And that's cool. But like, we immediately went to other layers deeper. That was the beginning of like the relationship blooming into what we're doing now.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, it was just meaning of life type stuff.
Yes, exactly. And that's why I'm asking, like, where do you think that came from? And it's funny because I have a similar story in that way where being deaf, challenges, and then always just wanting to escape, so give you what you want, do this homework, fine, you take this test, fine, just let me go play. So it was always this sense like I'll work really hard to give you what you want so I can be left alone, like so I can go, so validation or whatever is kind of similar, so that's in me. I have to work 4 or 5 times harder than everybody else because I can't hear. And that translated into everything else that I do.
Yeah,
that's why
that resonates. What's weird is as you're speaking, and I'm still trying to explore back. I can remember, and this is crazy because I've always been an outside kid. Uh-huh. I was the kid in the neighborhood that was always like barefoot running around, right? Okay.
Yeah.
We would play Jailbreak,
which is
it's like a manhunt type game.
Okay, yeah,
it's manhunt basically. Jailbreak, manhunt, very very similar games. It's a hide and seek type atmosphere.
Yeah, okay.
And even pick up games of like kill a man with the ball. And I always wanted to excel. And it's kind of weird when I hear people tell their stories and they talk about it's weird me saying it because I don't want to come off like I always had to like just be like I was this amazing person. I don't know where it came from. I don't know. I can't put a finger on like what the mechanism is in me that makes me, but I'm playing Jailbreak and I want to be the kid that like frees everybody and hides and no one finds me.
Yeah.
And I was always, that was me. Like I was always, they got Paul on their team, in my mind, I wasn't special. So I was always working hard maybe to be that just because of insecurities I had maybe as a kid or whatever, just because parenting issues and different things like that. My parents were together, but it was kind of like and I'll just dig a little bit into my upbringing. So I have 2 siblings, a brother and a sister. My sister's 9 years older. My brother's 7 years older. Okay. So I was kind of an accident, which is cool. I'm good with that. Yeah. They used to bust on me all the time, which is fine. But you figure if I'm 6, 7, and 8, my brother's a teenager and my sister's like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then my dad's kind of like on his work grind. He was a union steam fitter, kind of out, if he's on like 6 10s or something like that, like he's never home. Then when he's home, and he was an old school dad. Like he was an old school, very non-emotional kind of, yeah. So, I came along a little bit later in his life or, so just, as I've done a deep dive into my own self, I realized that there's probably maybe some like, I don't know if it was, it's not fair to say abandonment because compared to what some people have dealt with from an abandonment standpoint, it was not that. It was, you know, I was in a middle class subdivision. I wasn't broke, you know.
No, I know what you mean.
But I just, as I've done that self-development work, I realized that some of that probably comes from my desire to achieve, and just I had to chart my own course.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, it's I think it's not unusual that if you get into the root of everybody's upbringing, you're gonna find everybody will find something that is a trigger or something.
Yeah.
I have 3 kids, you have 3 kids, mine are younger, but we both know, and I'm pretty sure people that are parents know, that every child is different. So the same way that you'll say something to Michaela and Mason, exactly the same, they'll both receive it in 2 different ways. So one might look at it as abandonment, and the other one might be like, it's just dad being dad. And it doesn't really do anything.
Well
so
put.
it's fair for you to have that assumption, but you know, not abandonment. Because just because somebody's president doesn't mean they can't abandon somebody.
Yes. Very good.
Yeah,
No.
You know,
because they're present physically, but emotionally, are you getting?
Exactly.
And, you know, interesting enough, too, part of that was, and I always talk about this, within short order at a pretty young age, my mom and dad split. So I was like the only divorced kid. Yeah, like in the neighborhood, right? All the other families were together.
Then
it was a stigma, right? This was in the 70s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then pretty quickly, my sister went in the military at 18. So if she's 18, I'm 9.
Yeah.
So I'm, you know, and my brother went to college. So like my house was a quote normal house or whatever. And the next thing I know, like everybody's gone. It's my mother and I. My mother had her own issues. You know, she just passed away back in October. That's a whole nother, you know, we've explored that, you and I together. But yeah, so I mean, I think that's a big part of it. And then I wound up moving out when I was 18.
Yeah, it's young. Yeah, not much of a foundation to launch off of, right? It's more of you move out, now you got to build things. So with that being said, with that being said, we'll leave it there.
Sure.
I think it'd be cool to jump into how you got into trees, and then maybe to see if there's a correlation between the two or something like that. But that's the whole point, right? People, there's the tree stuff.
That's right. No, it's perfect. Yeah. So again, as I stated, I started working at a young age. I mean, I was the kid that went out and cut grass for neighbors and did little odd jobs and whatever. I mean, had a paper route. Literally, I was probably 12 or 13, and I realized like I could make my own money and chart my own course. So I was always busy working, had a couple jobs. I want to say I was 18, and a friend of mine, it's interesting too. I always gravitated toward like older dudes. Okay. Like I just, even when I was in high school, I was hanging out. So when I was a freshman, I was hanging out with probably 11th and 12th graders. Some of them were neighbors. So they were neighborhood kids. They were driving. So here, this was my friend's dad was an iron worker.
Okay.
And when he was laid off, he would climb trees. So he was a tree climber. And I mean, old school. You know, when you think old school with the 3-strand rope and, you know, spiking from the ground up. And so I would hang out at his house, and I actually became better friends with this kid's stepfather than I did with him. I would go over there and hang out with his parents.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
And this guy and I, his name was Bruce Leap. And yeah, I know, it's crazy. Well, what's crazy too, he's 3/4 Native American, and I don't know what I wanted to say Sioux, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you may or may not know this, and this may or may not seem like a thing, or someone might go, "Oh, you're stereotyping." But if you understand like the ironworking industry from way back in its inception, a lot of Native Americans worked in that industry.
Okay.
And for some reason, there's a I don't know if it's a built-in. They're not fearful of like heights and stuff. Like this was a thing back in the day, and if you research it, I think you'll find that to be true. Anyway, this guy fit the profile.
Oh yeah.
And he was like, "Hey, if you're looking for work, we got guys. You can come in. You would drag branches," and I was like, "Okay." So I'm 18. So I guess it was what 1983, something like that. And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." So I went and I worked for a little local company, and I was stacking branches and
chipping or stacking.
Stacking branches, dragging to the chipper, feeding the chipper, and then once, for me, what started, I think, the fever for it was once I touched the ropes. I started running ropes for him, and for the climbers on the job.
That
I mean, that just, I don't know what it is or what it was about doing that, and just like really assisting the climbers and talk about pouring everything you can into. And back then there were no devices. It was all wrapping around.
I was
trees.
just gonna ask you. Yeah. I was gonna say, would you
wrapping around trees, and
which not to cut you off, but which makes it more of a higher responsibility.
100%.
Because of
tree diameters, bark,
bark,
bark roughness, friction,
and the climbers on it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So it's like it's not. I just felt like, because I did that when I first started too, and then the porter wrap. So like, I remember it being like you just felt like you had more responsibility. That should So it became more intimate that way, in this weird way. Yeah. So do you feel like that's what happened with? You said Bruce Leap? Bruce Leap? Do you feel like that's what happened? Like you guys, you went to hang out with him, right?
Yep.
Now you're working with him. Do you feel that like he kind of took you under his wing, and then you kind of had a nice flow to go in there?
I think so. And I met my boss at the time, Stan Wrigley. He's in his 70s now, still has a tree business in Haddonfield. We're friendly still. There was never any animosity there. He's a great person. Yeah. He's still an old school tree guy.
Yeah.
But smart guy, and knows more than he used to lead on. I've realized later, like he knew more than he taught us all. Okay, that was just kind of, he taught us what we needed to know to execute the job. But when it came to like trees and function, and he knew some of that, but really never like shared that part of it.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So Bruce and I, we developed the flow. We also hung out outside of work. We used to go and spend a lot of time out in the Pine Barrens, taking the dogs. He had a Newfoundland and I had a Chow. And the two dogs were friends. And, back then we'd head to the pines and like 4-wheel and, swim. We were like river swimmers. We'd go out and like sometimes in March and like do cold plunges. This is back in the 80s, Polar Bear Club type stuff. And so we spent a lot of time outdoors. And then what happened was he got called back to the union at one point. Okay. And so like I was kind of there with the other guys, And it was a crazy environment back then. I worked with a bunch of like actual bikers, like biker guys.
Yeah,
but
I laugh in a way of like, that is cool.
Well, it is. And it was I almost feel like there are two different lives that I've lived.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know how crazy we want to get, but like,
no,
literally like the one day. And I know we've tried to really not make this podcast about, what am I trying to say? Like the bravado, the stories, but I think from a texture standpoint and a tapestry standpoint, in other words, weaving the life that I've, and this go ahead.
No. So what you said is true, but we are really good, in my opinion, with the stories, bravado or not. It's time, like, okay, because like right now, just so you know, I already have, like, I'm pretty good at this. It's in my head. It's Bruce Leap, right? Nothing bad about him.
No.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's, you just said before about possible abandonment issue, always thriving to grind. And now you got to work with a guy who didn't crap on you, who didn't make you feel small. So he might have not lifted you up, but that's what I said, was a nice flow state to it.
Well, there was, but what's funny is like he, and I don't know if he'll ever hear this or not. He's living down in Florida now, but and he would be the first to admit, like he was, like we were all half crazy. Like he was
Great.
There was a lot of masculine energy. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
like, you know, we were scrappy. We were, you know, once in a while we get in rubs and fights. And I mean, this is just how it was back then. But yeah, I mean, as far as like having my back, like these guys, this group were those type of dudes. Like if you're on the crew and you're in the team, you're in the fold. These were all 3 a.m. phone call type dudes. Like, yo, I'm having a problem, and whatever it was, I'm stuck. I'm caught. You know, I got a flat tire. I'm stuck in the mud down in the pines. Yeah. Where actually are you? And you know, back then there were no cell phones. Yeah. You're hiking out and finding a payphone and dropping a dime in the and calling somebody. You might walk miles out of the woods before you
get a phone. Yeah.
But yeah, so literally at Wrigley's, I'm saying the bike, it's a funny story. It's kind of an interesting story that I think will add a little texture, a little spice to it is, you know, here I'm this 19-year-old kid at the time, because now I'm a couple years in, and there was no set roster. It wasn't like Bill, Joe, and Sue work for Stan. You would show up in the morning, and he had his couple guys that were like his regulars, but maybe 6 guys would show up, and only 4 went out to work, and the other guys got sent home. Now I had become a regular, but like it got a little dicey here, and this one basically biker guy wants to throw down with me fisticuffs because he wants to go to work that day. And like challenges this. The funny thing is, looking back at it now, I don't really know how old these guys, because my perspective is so messed up. I don't know how much older than me they were back then, but they might have been mid to upper 30s.
It sounds like it.
And I'm 19 at the time, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember it never came to blows. But I remember standing up to the guy, and it was him and 3 of his buddies that worked there. Well, they were trying to get him in. They had already worked there, and I was. Yeah. And the funny thing was, the 2 guys that were his biker compadres actually loved me. Like, I worked with these guys, but the way they settled things was this way. And so they're like, "Are you guys gonna like?" And I'm like, I remember taking my shirt off and being like, let's do, like, if this is what it's going to take, let's do it. And he was just like, you know what? I'll tap out and I'll go home. And he wound up working. Actually, he and I became friends, but it was the respect factor.
Yeah. Which I would throw in, like, I'm a firm believer in this, and probably not to be too accepted, but we need more of that.
So yeah, I mean, literally, it's a meritocracy, and you know, I was never the look for the fight. I've never been that. Yeah. I'm not a provocateur. I'm not a guy that's you're in my seat. I'm not that guy. Yeah. I am definitely more the lover than the fighter type of guy.
But you're also willing to stand up to somebody, and that's what it is.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Correct.
Like I'm just trying to. It's almost like a tangent, but I'm also saying like.
100%.
We have a little bit more of that now. Things will be a little bit different, because there is a sense of like, you can't just run your mouth and not get popped in the mouth kind of a thing. So not to say that they were building that environment for you. And I personally like to hear that you had that. I kind of have a similar one, not as aggressive as fisticuffs, but in the sense that like they were like adding pressure. And then there was a point where I had to stop, stand up. Like, listen, you're not going to treat me this way. I deserve a little respect, So I think that kind of helped you become.
Listen, man, I can remember, and I'll go back to 5th grade bathroom, boys' room, kid literally trying to take my lunch money.
Yeah.
He had been held back once or twice already, and was older.
He's older, yeah.
And it's kind of funny, and I won't say the kid's name, but I remember it.
Yeah, sure.
And honest to God, I remember him kind of putting his hands on me and like kind of pushing me against the wall and being like, I know you have money and you're, this, like, you can't make it up. Like, this is like movie stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was bigger than me. And I pushed him away, and I hadn't grown into my body yet. I was kind of like a runt at that time. Yeah. It wasn't until 7th and 8th grade that I think I grew 3 or 4 inches, whatever, 3 inches, and I gained like 20 pounds.
Okay.
You know, and the same thing, dude. It was like this whole family. And to this day, if I see some of the cousins and all, there is so much respect between us.
You're talking about the workers, right? The biker workers?
No, this kid from the fifth grade.
Fifth grade. Okay,
yeah, like he's actually no longer alive, the kid that did this. But he's got a lot of cousins. We all grew up in West Deptford. And to this day,
so
the cousins and all are just like,
cool.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, what about the biker guys? Are they still?
So I haven't. I mean, I don't think half of them. I know a couple of them have passed on. Difficult lifestyles. A couple guys. One guy used to actually live in a tent on the property where we worked.
Oh wow. Okay.
His name was Dan Egan. He had this cool little '63 Falcon Sprint that he used to drive. Okay. Took all the seats out of, and basically like he could live in the car. Okay. Yeah, just a different time, man.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
So what the group of people, because you also mentioned Wrigley.
Yeah.
What's his first name?
Stan.
Yep. Stan Wrigley.
Yep.
So he that was his company then.
Wrigley's Tree Service.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do I say this? So like in that time, because you said 80, this is probably 84, 85 at this point.
Yeah. So at 85, I'm 20.
Yeah.
Because I was born in 65.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there, it sounds like a silly question, but is this the time where people, like there's bikers, it's just the way it was? When do you feel like that started to shift a little bit? When you left?
In terms of mentality?
Yeah, arborist mentality.
Oh, yeah. So there's a definite, what's interesting is it's that mentality of wanting to learn and grow. So like learning ropes. And then by the time, so he had I'll give you a little story because it's kind of cool and I'll try to connect the thoughts. Yeah. So he originally started his business at the house he grew up in Haddonfield, 717 Redmond Ave. Like, boom, we would meet there. I would drive in the truck with Leap. I would drive to his house and him and I would drive there. And he had a big, like, I want to call it like 3-inch boat rope, like a hawser, they call it, hanging from a giant silver maple in his back tree. And it was probably 50 feet up on this limb. And not these guys, but a couple of guys would climb it, and Wrigley would climb. Wrigley was a fit, big dude. And he, by the way, he was not a biker guy. He was actually a clean living dude, and I believe is a Christian. And I think the way he ran his business was almost like a home for wayward children. That's the way I used to look at it. Like in hindsight, he was taking in the lost, the indigent, the people that had nothing, giving them work, helping them out, and they were running his business, you know? And so in hindsight, I realized kind of that's what he's doing.
Yeah. Okay.
And then one day I was like, oh, you know, what's the rope for? Oh, you can climb the rope. You know, can you climb the rope? And I remember like no hands climbing. I mean, you know, you're talking, I was 19 years old and I was fit. Mm. And he's like, oh, you'd probably make a good tree climber. And I was like, ha, ha, ha. So that was the seed. And then I worked 18 till probably 20. I was there 2 years probably as a groundie, just learning how to run chainsaws and, you know, everything like that. Old home light whiz saws that sounded like Harley Davidson's, like, you know, learning how to run ropes and so forth. And then started doing like a little bit of climbing.
Okay.
And so I worked for Stan from 83 to 89. In 89, I went and interviewed for a position with Bartlett Tree Expert Company. And they were opening a satellite office in a town near kind of like where Wrigley was. They didn't have, they had someone there, but they were commuting from their Ballackinwood office over in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That was their main spot. It was a main line, like high-end homes, huge trees. I mean, you know, these are the trees like when you hear Riggs and Tatey and these are the trees these guys grew up on.
Okay, got it.
And so I go over there, and it's so funny, like looking back, like, you know, cocky 20-some-year-old, fit, ripped. I'm thinking I'm going to set the world on fire. Well, two things it did for me. It put me in my place because I went over there, and there was a barn of climbers. And I arrived there with all of my machismo or whatever, my ego, my 20-year-old, 22-year-old, whatever. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I kind of skipped the point. So I did groundwork at Wrigley's, and then I started climbing, and then I got pretty good. And by 22, I was running a crew for him.
Okay.
So started 18, 19, 20, 21, 2, 4 years. Now I'm kind of like climber foreman.
Got it.
So that just encapsulates that whole Wrigley's thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then I go to the main line, and they put me with a couple of their foremen over there, guy Bob Timmons, and this guy Julio. I don't remember Julio's last name. It's funny because Thigpen and all those guys all know. They remember these guys. Yeah.
Okay.
So they train me. I work with this guy, Dan Flynn, to kind of go through like foreman school. And then they install me as the first foreman in this Barrington office over in.
Got it.
Now, what happened was it was at that point they got me off spikes because I was at that point spiking everything from the ground up, either free climbing with no, like I had a lanyard on my hip, but you didn't tie in until you got to the top. So climb up, lanyard in, throw your snap hook through, tie your taut line hitch, 2 down, 1 up, boom, no stop or not, nothing, just complete insanity, you know. They opened me to the world of Alex Shigo. I remember going in the office and seeing books, and I'm like, wow. And as soon as I started, like, I opened one book. I feel like Modern Arboriculture may have been one of my first, but also Arborist News.
Oh, wow.
And going, Arborist News, Arbor Age. Oh, there's magazines for the industry? And I start to, just.
Yeah.
And
you took to it easily.
I did.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing is, I think an important fact is like I didn't do well in school. Okay, I'm no dummy, but like it just wasn't my thing. And I think a lot of people listening that in this industry, you're in this for a while, you kind of get that. You're more outside. You're a kinesthetic, visual, tactile learner.
Tactile, yeah.
You know, you live in space. You work in space. Your cognitive function is on 110th percentile, but other things maybe not.
Yeah.
So that was kind of where I was. But what I want to say is at this point, this is kind of all I have.
Okay.
Like I don't have anything else. I have no plan B. I don't have the only other thing I thought I might do is become an actor. I went to acting school over in Philly, and that's a whole nother thing. That's not a conversation for here, but that was my like big dream. You know, I was heavy into martial arts. I was doing 15 hours a week at the stool doing Hapkido, throwing, locking, like all kinds of hardcore, like combat, karate, Hapkido, Korean stuff. So I thought, I could, and this is the big time when like Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it was like the post Bruce Lee era kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that was my thing. But in terms of like earning a living day to day, I didn't have a career path. I wasn't going to college. So my thing was like, I need to be the best at this that I could possibly be. And that involved trying to learn.
Okay.
So I say the way I put it is Bartlett taught me how to learn. They taught me how, and that there was a science to tree work. And once I wet my whistle on that, so I only wound up doing a year at Bartlett, and then I actually went back to Wrigley's. Okay. So I did like 89 to 90, maybe early 91, a year and a half at Bartlett. I was a foreman. There's a whole reason I left, but just life path type stuff.
Yeah.
Went back to Wrigley's, started running a crew for him again, doing some sales for him.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So Wrigley's, bikes and everything, Bartlett to get you off. Well, how was that transition?
I went back and I was like, I'm not spiking anything.
Okay.
And he was like, how's that going to work? I'm like, it's going to work. Bear with me.
Okay.
And what wound up happening was, because he had another climber there that I actually got a job there.
Okay.
And he developed into a pretty good climber as well, this kid Mitch. And he would get in the tree probably faster because we weren't even quite using, like the throw balls were the big rubber bouncy throw balls. There were no...
The reason why I know what you're talking about is because Glenn Riggs posted the video of it, and I saw it. It's like a big, Okay.
I mean, we used to either monkey fist or we would just take an extension ladder. So you'd open the extension ladder up to 32 feet.
Yeah.
big fiberglass ladder, find a spot on the tree where you could comfortably lean it.
Yeah.
And then you would go up with, what I would do is I would tie my snap hook and tie almost like a monkey, like take the rope, go around, round, and tuck it through the buckle.
Yeah.
So I'd have a heavy,
like a weight. Yeah.
And then lanyard in, and we would put our feet on the top of the rails. Just give us that extra foot. And then you take a 12-foot pole saw. Well, now I can install a line at about 42 feet.
Okay.
For a lot of trees, that worked. And for the ones that didn't, you tried to throw that thing, or monkey fist over the first limb, and then you're ball crawling basically up there.
Yeah. So, did you have to fight regularly? Did you not fight, but fist fight, but like, because now think about it, the old school mindset, just climb the tree. It's still around, right? And it's like, no, like over time, let's just say a year, that over time, the old school climbing style, not only harming trees, but you're not going to last that long compared to the newer system, which is more efficient. It's just how it is. But back then, you come in with this new thing. Was it accepted? Was it like, yeah, sure, show us?
So it was more like, okay, if that's the way you feel like you need to do it, go ahead. We're going to keep doing this. And I was like, okay.
All right, that's cool.
And so I never got the other climbers to do it. I think Stan, so that what he noticed was like once I got up in the tree and I was moving around with no spikes, I was no less effective.
Okay.
I was as good and I was, I hate even saying this, but at the time I feel like I was I'll just say it, like more skilled than the other guy who was wearing spikes.
Okay.
But also to go back, I want to make sure I touch on this. When I got to Bartlett there, and I think maybe I did say this, there was a barn of climbers there that and so it just made me go, holy crap. You think you're at level X and all of a sudden you're going, you know what? There's half a dozen dudes here that just are so far ahead of where I am. I didn't even know this world of trees this big existed.
Yeah.
And now I'm over there like, okay, son, this is how we do it. But you know what? Honestly, like the whole group of them were all, I mean, they were amazing.
That's really
nothing
cool.
Short of amazing. And I learned so much. And the biggest lesson I learned is my place.
Okay.
And how to be humble. Because at that point, up until 20 years old or whatever, no.
Yeah. Which, in a way, this energy that we're talking about now can apply to the social media era, stuff that, just constantly going on. It's like, listen, man, you're in a fishbowl. It'd be a good idea for you to go in another fishbowl, obviously better, and you're going to find out real quick.
Yeah. What's interesting to me too, and you and I've talked about this, if I had my old sense of self, sort of my old ego, and I was carrying the experiences and knowledge that I have now, when I see a younger person come in who has a mindset of themselves and they have an image of themselves, it would be very easy for me to start to quote history and verse and you have no idea, and that's all ego. Yeah. And I don't have that, so I don't say anything. So when someone crosses my path, they really have no idea what my history and story is from a personal standpoint of what I've been through and from the tree work side of it, how I've come up or whatever, and I don't care.
And more importantly, what you have done in that time.
Yeah, no,
because you could also just still be the spiker.
True.
So
true.
That's also, you know what I mean?
True.
So it's more, that's why we're having this conversation, because we're not doing war stories. We're just connecting the stories so people understand the whole picture, and then there's the learning component. You see what I mean? So that's why I love that you had that experience of Bartlett, but you didn't go, just BS. I don't need this. I spiked you and go the other way. You went like, oh, there's reverence and respect that these people, there's better people, but also like bigger trees, and there's more. So you began the process of, at least on a mental level, of like, okay, I have a direction to go into now. Yeah. Right?
100%.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take a little bit of an aside, because I tried to make a post the other day about this, and for whatever reason, the sound didn't work. But it ties back to this a little bit. So all the people there were Now, I don't doubt there were egos and all, but there was a very learning environment, a teaching environment, a mentoring environment. Like, we have something here that's science-based, and we're proud of what we do as tradespeople. And it would have been very easy for them to go, look at this young, hey, think he come here, think he knows a thing or two, and like try to embarrass me. And there was none of that. And so I want to be careful too. I'm going to bring that and put a pin in it and go, okay, looking back, this is what happened. Now I'm going to look into present time. Yeah. So the other day I'm out, because I hear this a lot. This generation isn't worth a shit.
Yeah.
These guys don't want to work. They don't understand, blah, blah, blah. They didn't. Okay. Well, I have the experience going back 42 years. And you know who said that to me? Like my dad and like his generation. You kids, don't. It happens to every generation. Okay. So we're on a job the other day. We come in, it's raining. We have a powwow. They're all young kids, 27 and down. 27, 20, 20, 20. Like 3 kids. My son, two of his friends. Doug's about 34. So to me, they're all young bucks.
Yeah, sure.
They're all like, let's go. I'm like, okay. We go out, we set up, we're working. It starts to open up, the yellow comes in on the radar.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I say all that to say, it really comes down to who you are as a leader. So I look at it like this. It's so easy to say, this generation, they don't know, they don't. Well, if you see a young kid that doesn't know how to rake properly, do you know that like maybe his dad has a lawn service and the kid's never picked up a rake? As a leader, are you stopping and saying, hey, excuse me, whatever your name is, Bill, Sue, have you ever? No, actually, I've never done it. Can I give you a few points? Can I build you? Can I teach you? Can I instruct you? Can I put my own cranky rear end aside and actually mentor this person? Right? So I feel like that attitude was shown to me and given to me by these people who could have very easily put me in a category of some young kid who thinks this way and all.
I see what you did. Yeah.
But they invested in me.
Yeah.
But now, so this is a challenge. I'm glad I'm doing it here because I wanted to do it on social media the other day. And just go, if you're one of these old people, these older guys who thinks your generation has it wired, guess what? There were people in Gen X who sucked, who don't want to work, who loaf, who were lazy. You can't make a statement about an entire generation of people. And I mean, that goes for millennials too. And even millennials now.
But even go back to 1700s, 1600s, there is no generation that every person was an amazing worker. It's just not, it's not true.
So I just, to me, that's a sense of like, who are you as a leader? What are you bringing to the table? Are you going to sit back and complain and feed the narrative of this generation? Or will you actually step up, tutor, mentor, invest, and lift?
Yeah, and lift. There you go. Nice. Yeah. No, and with that being said, I love that you just made that connection, because respect to those people at Bartlett that 100%. Did that for you, right? Because that could easily have been, a completely different storyline. Who knows, right? That's really cool.
And I think ultimately, too, the one thing, even with all the, and look, man, a lot of young men, like it's testosterone. All of a sudden it starts to flood your body and you're like, I'm King Kong, And so it's part of it was that. Yeah. But I'm blessed with an insatiable curiosity. And I think that is what makes me, even at 60, want to just always take in new information. Yeah. I mean, I see what you guys are doing with the cannabis and all these different things and, multiple lines and points of attachment and this and that. And some of it, sometimes I look at, if I can't put my hands on it and I'm looking at it in a video, it's tough for me to not physically touch it. I can't own it. Yeah. But I see it and I'm like, there's something there that's usable that I can integrate. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't know how much longer I'm going to do this, but until I can't, I want to look at what's coming in. I want to look at the innovations in the new. And that's what I said I loved about Bert. Yeah. Is that here he is, 65 years old. He's in a tree and he's got a Rope Runner Pro. He could be on a taut line hitch, but he's not.
He's not, no. Yeah. Love it.
It's inspirational.
Yeah. So like I said, I want to return.
Yeah, no,
because I feel like it's getting there. So we're at Wrigley's.
Yeah.
Wrigley is that? It's like the bubblegum Wrigley.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure. All right, Wrigley. So you get back to Wrigley. Stan Wrigley is cool with you with the new style. You know, arborist. This is what I like, the arborist mindset. He's cool. Like if it works for you, go for it. And it turns out that you're kind of parallel. Let's just say you're parallel with the best climate that they have at the time, right? Because maybe you're a little bit better, but at least Stan's not looking at it as like you're going back to spikes. Yeah, you're not doing a good job.
No, not
right?
at all.
Okay, so you go from there. That is good. Like what happens at that point?
Yeah, I mean, he was happy to have me back, and I was happy to be back. Nothing against Bartlett, but it was as I began to look at a career path, it was a little more slow than I'm there and I'm working and I'm thinking, well, if I wanted to do the sales guy's job, or I wanted to be a general foreman, or I wanted to, what does that look like? Where does it go? And I had a little more clout at Stan's because I was able to sell work and do the foreman thing, and I was the guy that showed up early. So I just, I had a little more, I guess we could call it status, but a little more oomph. My earning power was a little bit better.
Okay.
And so I just went back and I thought, you know what? I think I can help. My idea was I could help him elevate.
Okay.
I was like, okay, now I'm coming back with this new mindset. I'm going to continue to learn on my own, that's the thing that Bartlett did for me. I remember getting Alex Shigo's website, and then I remember ordering books, ordering pamphlets, beginning to read. Yeah.
No, so with that being said, just to add a little part for the listeners, that's the key point, because the guy that I have working with me, Desmond, he's not certified, but he's also like I'm trying to coach him to turn into the arborist mindset. Certification is great, and he's going to work towards it, but certification doesn't make you an arborist.
Somewhere in the world is the worst doctor.
Exactly.
Who has a certificate hanging on his wall or her wall. And
if you knew how she operated, you would not want to go to him for X, Y, Z. Correct. So that's well said. Well said. So my point is, for the listeners, it's really cool to hear that you already started to adopt that early on. Alex Shigo did the work so people could pick it up and then hopefully do the ethical things in the tree, world.
And by the way, too, I had pretty quickly after that, got to see him speak. And we'll talk about this maybe later, but ultimately I wound up, I won't say becoming friends with him, because I was not friendly with him. Sure, okay. Saw him speak multiple times, had several hallway conversations with him, called him on the phone. I called to order books one time. He answers the phone. I'm like, Dr. Shigo, you're answering your own phone? And he's laughing at me like, oh, what else would I do? And I'm just like, what?
Cool.
So we're having this conversation, and then I was glad before he passed, Steve Chisholm Jr. basically put it out there like, hey, Shigo's doing his 3-day tree dissection workshop. Who wants to go? And I went up to the Sugar Shack up there in New Hampshire and right on the Maine border, and just, man, 3 days in a cutting lab with him, looking at things under a microscope, and he had a colleague at the time who he was, I think, discipling, Dr. Kevin Smith, who I think still involved in, pathology and things like that, and just.
See,
wow.
I see the look on your face. That gave you more oomph.
Yeah.
To uphold the standard of the profession.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
Well, what I realized was that I could, so interestingly enough, this is a little aside, but it'll add, I think, again, a little spice, a little flavor to the story. My father at the time we lived on the same street. I had an apartment at the top of the hill, and his house was down on the right. And he was a union guy, fitter. It's a great trade. They make a lot of money. They're one of the higher dollar trades. They're very diverse. They do a lot of really cool things. The benefits package. I mean, that man retired and had an annuity that paid him ridiculous amounts of money every month, full benefits. And I think in his heart of hearts, his dad was a fitter. He was a fitter. He really had it in that I would become a fitter.
Yeah.
And I was kind of, part of it was the issues I had with him at the time. We made our peace. But I remember driving down my road. I didn't, this is very early on in the business, and like my first year.
Of your business?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I have a pickup truck full of brush, and I got pole saws like tied on the side of the truck, and I walk by, he's walking his dog, and he's shaking his head. And I'm like, what's up? He's like, you're going to kill yourself doing that, and I'm like, this was my narrative with my dad,
Yeah.
So I think the learning part and understanding that this was a whole honorable, heady, smart, sharp, talented people could do this, and we're doing it. That I realized I could make a trade out of this. I don't have to leave it.
Yeah.
If I do this the right way, there's nothing to be ashamed of here. Which is why when you and I spoke at Arbor Expo, that's one of the themes I want to keep driving home, and is that, if you remember in the talk, I was like, this is like a thing I want to hit on now. I was like, be proud of this.
Yeah, I remember.
Carry yourself with dignity. Carry yourself with pride. Elevate your game. Do the best you can. Learn the science behind what you're doing, whether it's learning about the tree and the plant or how you access the tree and the plant. Right?
Yeah. No, you said it perfectly, because that part that you're talking about, I'm pretty sure you agree with this, and most people that actually care about what they're doing. But I personally believe that what we're doing in the tree is really like a specialized experience of multiple disciplines. Thank you, disciplines. I looked it up at some point, and I believe trigonometry is the study of angles. Obviously we can go geometry, shapes, and the angle shape, stuff like that. Then we deal with the weight ratios, what we think, how much weight. Then we got the rope. Then we got this rigging system. Now we're rigging specialists. So like, if we're making it romantic, but we are like specialized romantic Renaissance men while we're aloft. And that's why, just for tree climbing, yes, there's other stuff, but that's why I always feel like I walk away like, dude, I'm doing something special. We don't get recognized for it. And I'm okay with that. I don't need the recognition, but I know what happens when I'm up there. And it's really special. So real quick, I'll let you, but because it's for you.
No.
But the reason why I'm saying, like, your dad being like, you're gonna make it life harder for yourself doing that. And it's like, yes, it's hard work, but ultimately there's something special happening here. Alex Shigo discovering like the living organism and how it moves and grows, like him doing that opened up the world even more. So like there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening. So
no, I agree. Yeah. What I hear is something really cool, because this is something I've been working through, is like validation.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And so a lot of people that are like wounded, not to get all woo woo or whatever, but a lot of people that carry wounds, maybe some of them don't even realize that that's why they are like they are. And it's, different things. Oftentimes it can be looking for validation that wasn't received either as a kid or something by either parent or somebody. And so when I hear you say, we don't get the recognition and it's okay, that's from a position of strength, right? Mm-hmm. So I see that as like, that's why I'm pushing this whole be proud of yourself. This is a professional trade, and 100% agree, could not agree one iota more that we are multidisciplined. There's multidisciplinary, and if you really go and you go from soils and roots
yes,
all the way up, structure, pathology. I mean, just everyone that's listening that knows. They know. We don't have to explain it to them. They understand exactly what we're saying. You're rolling several trades into one trade.
Mm-hmm.
That's why my message, and I think it's just starting, and I want it to grow. If someone meets me or sees me, I want to now give this message one to one, as well as I do in groups, is to say, listen, this is a romantic trade. It is one of the few remaining romantic trades. It has a rich history. There's a deep, rich history and an evolution of all the things we're talking about, the gear, the science behind the plants and everything. You're validated because you're doing it. You don't need the validation from someone else. So let that also parallel with your life. We need to learn as adults, as grown-ups, that our validation doesn't come from whether it's, 16,000 followers, 30,000 followers, whatever it is. It doesn't come from status. It doesn't come from winning a championship. It doesn't come from, I've been an instructor at XYZ. And, I'm proud of my resume, but ultimately I don't, what it does is it allows me to look at my life and my career and say, okay, I've done the best I could with what I've been given. And of course, also being a believer, I'm valid because God values me. And it takes a while to get to a point where you realize you're not looking, we shouldn't be, what I'm driving at is that validation, looking for it outside of ourselves leads to trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so if we can really and that's why my message to people is, listen, man, in spite of the torn knuckles and the bruised body and all the things you deal with, the hardness, and my life probably could have been easier had I been a fitter. The money would have been fine. I'm 60. I'd be retiring in a couple of years with a full benefits package. I run my own business. I don't have that.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to make sure that I take care of that on my own, or as I dissolve my assets and things like that. So it's a much more difficult life. But as I am on the back half of it now, so to speak, not to be morbid, but it's just the reality of life, and I'm cool with it. I'm good.
And that's a lesson for the listeners too. Like the back half of life, I used to say like the end of life. That's part of it. Dude.
Yeah,
like,
no, 100%.
There's traditions. I would say tradition. There's cultures that this is what they do. They practice death,
right?
Like, because they understand the power of it, which gives you appreciation for life.
Yeah, I think if you don't fear death, it allows you to live.
Correct. That's
there's a fearlessness to, and even something as simple as going through at 60 another difficult financial winter.
Yeah.
Not because I don't have things, but because cash flow sucked, and I have bills to pay, and it was rough. But there were deep. There's. It's like the body getting a fever. The body gets a fever once in a while to purge out whatever, parasites, viruses, different things that can't live in that environment. And I think oftentimes, like, it's like as Christians say, like when we pray, God, please send me a woman that I can love and this and that. God, please get me this job. God, take this ailment away. Maybe the thing we're going through is the very thing that God is using to chisel and shape all the impurities out of our lives, right? To make us a stronger person, someone with emotional strength. It exercises our faith and makes us stronger faith. And guess what? Now someone's suffering. I have a friend that I've met, I'm not going to tell his name, who reached out. He doesn't even live in this part of the country. Hey man, look, could you pray for me? This is what I'm dealing with. And I can minister there because I've struggled.
Sure.
I'm not sitting in an ivory tower somewhere preaching down to this person.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, you know that I suffer and have suffered. It's part of the human condition.
Absolutely.
Part of our problem as humans is thinking that we deserve somehow not to.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and the funny thing is, it's supposed to be challenging. I mean, it's just the reality
it is.
of it,
And I love that you and I talk about this often, and it's been a theme on the podcast, is that for anything to grow, it's got to be stressed and strained. And that goes from bones to muscles to trees. To the mind.
From infant, toddler, child, adult. Yeah. No, I'm with it. Yeah. So it's I love you went there, because you went there and you're in the present moment. It's a combination of everything you learned up to this point. So we'll even fast track you at Wrigley, you this and that, you start your own business. You grow, you expand with everything, the go-get-it attitude that you have, right? Your dad planting a seed of like, you're like, no, like this is an honorable profession. I love what I do. I can build this thing and take care of my family, meet your wife and kids and stuff like that. What what leads me to, like, do you want to dive into the tree stuff more? To kind of, it's a thing.
Sure, anywhere you want to go, man.
Yeah. What I mean, like, did anything happen that was a massive, like, trigger, a fall from a tree, a death of a coworker,
Wow.
you know, like, because I feel like these are also important.
They are.
Not, again, we always say, not because other people can say, well, you did the, it's not. The thing is, what happens from that point.
So there were a couple things when I think about watershed moments. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll bring you from the going back to Wrigley into tree awareness. So I was working for Wrigley, and I can make this very quick.
Sure.
I'm working at Wrigley's. Like I said, it's about 91, and I'm doing a fair amount of side work at the time. Now, mind you, my side work was through my own network of people that I knew, met, trusted, loved, whatever, family members, friends, etc. He worked in the county north, and he very rarely, if ever, came into the county that I lived in. So he lived and operated in Camden County north. So Camden County, Burlington County, kind of up that way. And I lived in Gloucester County, the county south of him.
Okay.
So I was very transparent and very honorable in my dealings. Like, he knew, hey, Saturday I'm doing this side job, blah, blah, blah. To the point where he would even sometimes rent me his equipment. Hey, how much would you charge me to run your chipper and truck? Give me $200. Okay.
Cool.
And then it got to the point where I started to get busy, like consistent work. And so I started taking Fridays off. I was like, hey, listen, I don't want to leave. And actually, just so you know, I actually propositioned him to let me expand. I said, listen, why don't you let me market and work in Gloucester County, the next county down. Like, I don't want to leave. I love it here. I like, you're my tree daddy kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Who's your daddy? You know?
Yeah, right.
But I just enjoyed having that net because I have another mind, a more mature tree person, you know, an older guy, a crew. I don't want to have to do everything on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So how about we'll do the commission, because he was giving me commission on sales. I'm like, you give me commission on anything I do, give me a crew, I'll run down and I'll try to expand, and we can start doing work down that way. And he, you know, he just wasn't into it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was like, okay, well, this is kind of what I see. This is kind of what I want to do. I'm actually getting jobs like almost every weekend now. And I said, I can't do it all on Saturdays. You know, I'd like to. So we worked it out. He's like, hey, look, whatever. And I developed that attitude too. Like, I'll work guys, and somebody's, I can give you 3 days a week, and I'll strategically plan days when I need the extra help. And I think you have to be flexible. I think it's a gift and a skill to be able to integrate people when you can. If you can get a good person on the team and they have a good heart and soul and a good work ethic and they want to do it, and you got room for them, you let them do it.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I started doing 4 days a week with him, and then eventually it just got to a point. And so in 92, I think I went out on my own, and wasn't really official. It was legitimate, me and one of my childhood friends going out, cutting trees and shoving every bloody thing in the back of a pickup truck. I mean, loads to the mill or to the dump sites, and some of them were not all legitimate dump sites. Let's put it that way. We hey, look, we went a little back in the woods at the school or whatever. Like, you know, look, just being transparent, you know?
And I get it. Listen, which is cool.
Because, I just want to keep it real.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not like I'm dumping toxic waste, but you know.
No.
So then 93 was the first official year.
Okay.
So I got hired an accountant, and that was the first year I filed a tax return as tree awareness.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
93, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that brings us into the current.
No,
because you had asked something specific.
No, you gotta know. It's good. It's good. So that's, you know, how'd you get in the trees and what happened? And that's good. You're an owner. But one of the things I'm curious about is, did something drastic happen? Any experiences like that? And there's a reason for that, for me at least.
Perfect. Yeah. And so the one thing I wanted to mention, because we do tip a cap to the Chisholms quite a bit. So interestingly enough, I joined that year. I joined what at the time was just the Jersey chapter of ISA, and so the two entities were separate. The New Jersey Arborist Association and ISA Jersey were two separate So I joined both, started attending meetings, and Mark would know better. But that year in 93, the conference was up at the old Playboy. It was like Great Gorge, Vernon Valley, up that area. There was a hotel there, and Shigo spoke.
Oh, okay,
and I was like, oh, this guy, I've been reading his books, and it was so cool. And then that was the first hallway conversation I had with him in 93, walking back to our hotel rooms. And he's got his briefcase, and I'm like, hey, and
that's cool, though.
The 5 minutes, and I'm asking questions, and he's like, he actually revered those of us that worked in trees. Like, he was really cool like that. Like, he was the head and the guy that had all this knowledge and was like, you're the ones touching the trees. Yeah. Take this, what I'm teaching you, and touch the trees and do it right. And I was like so inspired by that.
That's cool.
He was just and a great sense of humor. I mean, just like, it actually makes me, I'm like, feel a little emotional thinking about it. Like, it's just interesting how I didn't expect to feel that, but
no, but it's good. But because, and for the listeners, if you're just a tree worker and you're not on this, I always go with we got the brains and the bronze. If you're just the brawn, there's nothing wrong with it. But I highly encourage the listeners, to go to the brain side of things too, because there's a whole world involved in there that, as far as I'm concerned, it's been endless for me. I haven't even I barely even scratched the surface, and it just keeps going and going. And hearing you talk about the fact you got to meet Chigo, talk with him. And then he was also really cool. Like, he was the brain, not the brawn, but he was excited for the brawn to take the brain and go back into 100%. The field. It's so cool.
And here's a gem, I think. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a dud. Just made me think of it. Don't bring a 2-dimensional mind into a 3-dimensional space.
Exactly.
Right? So we work in a 3-dimensional space. Some would say 4, maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't bring one plane of existence into what we're doing. Exactly. It's multi-dimensional what we do.
Yeah.
And you come at it one-sided like that with just your body, and you're holding yourself back. You're just not bringing all the tools that you need to execute the job. So what's cool is, fast forward, and again, Mark would know better. He went to Europe. First of all, the split tail at some point had moved in, and that was a big deal. Climbing on a split tail, splitting that Blake's hitch off on a separate line and not having to untie the knot when we wanted to advance. That was a watershed moment. Awesome. And then putting a pulley under that knot so you got knot advance. Yeah. That was like, an automatic transmission coming from a stick, although I love stick and I enjoy stick.
Same, yeah.
And then Mark, I don't know what happened. He went to Europe for something. I don't know whether it was a learning or a teaching. I'm not really sure, but he was climbing with a bunch of European guys, and he came back with the VT. Yeah. The VT came to the States, my belief, is through Mark. Okay. And so he ran this little seminar. I don't even think there were 20 guys. And we went up in trees, and he was like, hey, check out this knot. And he was like, kind of like, I'm not suggesting you climb on it, but this, like this kind of thing.
At your own risk.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I learned how to tie that thing, and I never looked back. I went home and started climbing on a VT. Oh. And so the VT with the split tail, so that's a major hat tip to Mark. Mm-hmm. Man, I've been blessed by this community, which is the reason I want to do this, what we're doing. Yeah. Because before I tap out or God takes me home, I want to make sure that I'm reaching back and just trying to. So that was a watershed moment for me, like one of those, you see a change in your dynamic. So there was the Shigo heady stuff, and then Mark, smart too, and Steve Jr. with the whole, hey, there's all these certifications and getting my licensed tree expert and approved arborist in New Jersey. And at one time I took this climbing ISA climber track. Okay. Now I'm track certified, CTSP, first aid and CPR. So like just trying to, and then becoming an instructor and, but all those opportunities came through people. Yeah. They opened doors and were like, hey, would you be interested in this? Yeah, sure, I would, and ultimately you go in thinking you're going to minister and you wind up being ministered to. Which is kind of,
Love it. It's awesome. Yeah.
And then I did have one. I had a couple close calls. There was one, and this is kind of it's the one I'll dig into.
Okay. That's fine.
And it's cool because it kind of, pun is intended, ties it all together. So I'm climbing a dead poplar. Let's call it 28 to 32 dBH. It's a woods tree, so it's real tall. It has bark up to a height of maybe 30 feet, and then it starts to get nasty, and then the top is gray, right? So it's dead. So I think, all right, better not climb this by itself. I just need to get up and top it because there's some lines across the way, and I can't drop this 100+ foot tree. So let me tie into the live poplar behind me. So I throw into this tree, I set a line, and I start to spike up lanyard up, spike, adjusting my rope. I'm on a VT. I'm on a 1/2 inch, I think probably like a Yale rope, 16 strand. And so I set a tagline and I go to take this top out, and the listeners can't see this, but the people watching can. So as I cut the top, I have my guys put a line, and I literally say to them, do not pull too hard because I don't want to put extra loading forces on the tree. And then I'm also careful, and this is a long time ago, so I'm happy that I knew all this back then. Like I was worried even about the top coming over and that hinge holding enough where it really put torque below the cut.
Yeah, okay.
So I wanted it to come over and then come off.
Yes.
So I notch it. Are you ready? Okay, I'm cutting. And I'm cutting. The top comes over, and all of a sudden I feel I'm moving. And I look at the ground, and the ground is moving. Okay. The tree blew out.
Yeah, on the bottom down.
The tree blew out 20 feet off the ground, and I'm lanyarded to it. Well, now I think I told my ground guy, tell my wife I love her.
Dude. Hold on. So you had the presence of mind.
Yes. Like what happened was it fell off and it rode between my lanyard and my groin and my thighs.
Okay.
This 28-inch diameter. So it does this and goes to the ground. Wow. Now it hits the ground and it's loose. Yeah. And I'm and between and I hear this and I look, my knot is smoking. Oh. Now here's a cool thing. If that was another knot, it would have snapped the rope. Think about how a Blake's or a taut line
it cuts the percent of the effective. There's a percent you lose percentage when you use a knot. Yes,
like a Chinese
VT
finger
just
trap.
spirals. Yeah.
If I was on that old school knot, severed rope. I guarantee it's severed rope. So and this is all probably in a few nanoseconds. And as it slides through it, it takes a little bit of a chunk out of my. So I'm holding my lanyard and I'm holding my rope, trying to like keep the tree from. I guess I think I'm holding it somehow. I don't know. Yeah. So I wind up I draw my handsaw, and I cut my lanyard right where the bend is at the beaner. I still have the beaner with the tooth marks from the
saw. Yeah.
So I managed to get myself to the ground, and I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to wind up underneath the tree. It would come down, I'd fall, and just, or I would fall to my death. Basically, is what I thought. So what's interesting is I go to a show and there's a guy, maybe some of the listeners, Stan Longstaff was his name. He was I think he lived in Maine. He was like he was into folk music and this and that. And he was a splicer. Okay. And I used to buy rope from him and he would custom splice. I used to get an eye on each end. And he's like, I know it's you because you're the only one that gets an eye on each end. He's like, and you're a pain in the ass because I got to milk the core both ways and blah, blah, blah. He's like, but it's cool.
Okay. Yeah.
So what he used to do is he would collect broken trinkets, like broken beaner gates, and I knew that he did this, so I went to a show. Actually, I think Mark had him come and give a talk, something like that. Okay. So I took my fused VT.
Oh, you had it when it was smoking. Yeah.
It was glazed and it was like crusted to the rope, and I took all that and all, and I gave it to Stan. Wow. And what's messed up, little side story is, back when I would enter the trees mainly by footlock, and I would use my double-handled Petzl ascenders, and he would make these bridles, these custom-made spliced bridles to your stroke length and everything, you know. Awesome. And when they outlived it's a shame. He passed. He died of cancer, which was very sad. He was he just brought so much to the industry because he also came, I think, from like sailing. So he had this major sailing and rope and rigging background, and then he crossed over into tree. And so I had this bridle, and when it lost its usefulness, like I had to stop using it. I used to just carry it in my bag as like a memento to Stan and that interaction we had and his relationship with Mark, and it's just, you see those things and it just makes you think of that person.
You honor him.
I'm honoring
by doing
him.
That, yeah.
So the screwed up thing is this building got robbed years ago, and they stole my gear bag, and that was in it.
Oh.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking.
That hurts. Yeah.
No, they didn't know what they like.
No,
they got a bag of gear. They got every chainsaw I own. It was we turned in an insurance claim for like $15,000 because they got us good. Yeah. And I just thought, man, if I could have one thing back, it would be that saddle and that rope, Yeah. So, but anyway, I know that's like a big long aside, but
no.
It's cool to pay honor to those people too. Like just constantly people giving back and sewing in and just.
No, you you even said it before we started this podcast. Kevin Bingham was at the Pendle competition. You know what I mean? Like even Kevin Bingham, like just say, hey, man, it's really cool that the time that you spent mentally tinkering with this idea. What obviously his story is a good one. But there's always that you always want to honor the person. You know what I mean? And they're always like, oh no, just even the way Derek Martin thinks, like, no, it's just and it's like, yeah, we understand that's what you think, but there's still I like the word reverence. There's a reverence to it. You know what I mean? It's like,
I agree.
When I was putting time into the competition scene with Jake Riggs, who's my mentor, he still is, but even him, like I told him, like I'm not an innovator, but when it comes to biomechanics and body movement, that's me. Sure. That I take that to the
Oh, I see it. Yeah, for sure. No, and it's
So. But when it comes to the innovative, like, all right, well, this rope moves this way. Do we add this little bend? What happens? And it's not that I'm not interested, or it's just not. I'm more into the multi-dimensional space. That's my thing. Like, well, if I swing and I happen to lean this way, how do I make it lean back a little bit? Like biomechanics, that's my thing, So, but the point is honoring somebody for all the stuff they've done, especially if they're not here anymore. I think it's an important thing to do while you live life.
I agree. And part of what I love about the human condition is that Stan is gone and there's a ripple that he's left. There's a legacy that he's left that affects me still to this day. Right. Which is pretty cool. So like, are we living lives like that, or are we living a life of self-promotion, of attention seeking, of self-glorification? Or are we sowing into others, glorifying others, building up our teams?
Yeah, leaving an impact.
There's two schools of thought there, and it's like, what are we doing? And look, man, I spent a lot of my life being self-centered.
Yeah, well, I think we all do.
And I think to a degree we still can be and still are. Ultimately, like we kind of have to do it because we got to take care of ourselves. But, servant's heart, servant's mindset, glorifying your team rather than yourself, glorifying God and the gifts he's given us rather than ourselves. Like, that's kind of where you want to press in,
With that being said, that's perfect. When was that near-death experience, was that pivotal, or were you already on the path?
What I would say it did for me was, I think it just gave me it's a great question. And you're forcing me to contemplate my pre and post, because that was before Mason was born. So it's over 20 years ago.
And that's what I was going to follow up. Like, I promise, I was literally just going to be like, family can be the next part to that conversation. So.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of weird, because at that time, I'm probably in my 30s. I'm just trying to think. Maybe it was well before the building was built. The building was built in 04. So that's 21 years, because we're in 05. So it's probably late 90s this happened.
Okay.
Pre 2000, I think. And so you figure if I'm doing a little mental math, right? Okay. So 85, I'm 20, 95, I'm 30. So I'm probably 30, 31, 32. Okay. So I'm at the height of like physical prime.
Yeah.
Competing, working. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't. I think I was 33 when I first. Anyway.
Yeah. You were in a good place.
I was in a good place. So I think what it was is though, from that point forward, there were a couple close calls, but nothing that was like where I thought, yeah, that could have been it. And I think what happens is when you're young, even though you acknowledge hazard and risk, it's very hard to get your head around the fact that it could happen to you. Mm-hmm. So I think it was one of those eye openers where it was like, yeah, you know what? It almost happened. Yeah. Like it almost happened. And I could be on the ground and I could be broken or dead. Mm-hmm. And I think what it did was it just gave me maybe a proper perspective of, and we don't have a thing for this in our industry. And I said it maybe on the last podcast, like the carpenters do the measure twice, cut once.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think maybe somebody wants to come up with something cool, like, look once, tie it twice. I mean, tie it once, check it twice. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I don't know what the answer is, but measure twice, cut once. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think if it did anything, it probably got me to just be willing instead of going always kind of balls to the wall. When you're a business owner, you make money on bidding a job and then beating the bid. Yeah. Like that's really when you're crushing it. And I think it just got me to go, okay, big fella, like
slow down.
Take a breath, look at your environment, look at risk. And I did, listen, I believe that what I did in terms of tying into the other tree, having the problem, it also made me, I'll tell you what it did do too, is it made me think really long and hard about tying into dead material with a lanyard that you can't disengage. So for years I thought about, is there some kind of fuse we could develop where we hit it and it pops off? Yeah. But then I'm like, well, that could happen when you don't want it to, if you hit something. So then what I started doing is, that's when I started using a second system.
Okay.
So my thought is, if, or bring a crane if possible, tie into the crane. Yeah. Now we have lifts. Now I would just put my lift on it.
Yeah, sure.
But the point is, if I had a second system with no lanyard, but I had and that tree went, I just got to grab my knot and that tree's going to ride to the ground. The rope's just going to pale out.
Yeah. So the reason why, it sounds weird, but the reason why I like diving into this kind of stuff is I believe, it's like a seed that's planted or it's not, and I feel that in the industry, correct me if I'm wrong, you hear that the numbers for fatalities, falls, struck bys is always pretty much consistent across the board every year. Is that?
It is pretty correct.
But now think
there
about
have been no major shifts in those numbers.
Yeah, which is nuts.
It is.
How
we need to do better.
Innovation happens, things get better, and there's training, there's instruction. So it's really weird that the numbers are always pretty consistent. So not this revolutionary idea, but the thing is, like, that's why I always feel like we're tapping underneath to what is that? Like, why is that happening? And obviously find the answer is not the point now, but the thing is, that's why I like diving into that, because what you did the right thing. You tied into a live tree, you landed in here, it's going to happen. But then, like, there'd been somebody else who would have just spurred up that tree, and then that's the fatality. So that's why I like diving into it. Like, okay, what do we have to do to really see what we can do to make it work and not? Well, that was a close call. I'm good. Let's keep going. And that's why. And I know we know each other very well. So I know that did enough for you to be like, okay, like you said, I'm gonna check measure twice, cut once now. Where before you probably did that, but more just on.
I think I definitely think I did it, and I know that I did. And at that time, I was already teaching. I think for the CAA quite a bit. I was helping run their climbing course and stuff because that's when I was really in my prime of doing that. Was probably early 30s up into my mid to late 40s.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe 50. Actually, probably even longer, but that's irrelevant. Anyway, I say all that to say that. Yeah, if you have a watershed moment like that and you don't hit pause for a minute and reflect, take inventory, re-strategize, recalibrate, and take a new approach, you've done yourself and your team and your family a bit of a disservice. You can't just go, oh, well, survive that one and just go back in like, I mean, that just makes no sense.
No, that's it. That's it. You nailed it on that one. So with that being said, that's family. Because you have that, you said I'm assuming your 2 daughters were born at this point, and then you said Mason's afterwards.
Yeah, so Michaela was. Yeah, now you're gonna make me do dates. Yeah, no. Michaela was 95.
Yeah, okay.
And yes, Michaela was 95, and Madison was 99. Yeah. So it probably must have been 99 or 2000, maybe, now that you put it like that. Because I remember saying, tell my wife and kids that I love them, which is like pretty dramatic. But I thought, all I could think to say was, let me get this out in case these are the last words.
Listen, I'm with you. It's just
because I'm hanging between, at this point, I'm communicating. And I had a climber on the ground.
Yeah.
And I remember communicating, and I'm like, something's going to snap.
Yeah.
And then I just... like I said, I said a sentence. I don't know. Maybe it was 4 seconds, 5 seconds, and then I pulled the saw out and cut the landing or whatever.
Well, that's what I'm just saying. Family. So in a weird way, it's a segue into the family part. Yep. So you have that experience. Come home, your wife, kids. You just tell them. Not your kids, but your wife. You're like, I am not talking about this at all. This is something.
No, she got it. Okay. I don't know if she got it. Well, actually, you know what happened? I went to the hospital.
Oh.
Yeah. So
the knee or no?
I'll explain it. So, I was shook up, but I was like wanting to finish the job, and like my guys are like, yo. Like my one guy, Tom, his name's Tom Keller. He's like, dude, like he thought I was going to die, And he's like, oh, and I was like, I'm fine. I'm good. And then I started having just like some tingles like in my hand and my neck, like just whatever.
Yeah, sure.
And so I didn't like how I was feeling, kind of thing, Maybe I was I don't really know. Like looking back on it, like I don't know. I in my mind I feel like I was okay. But it's weird. I'm talking to you right now, and so what happened was they realized that So it was funny. My chiropractor at the time and the ER doctor was like, "You are lucky that you're built like you are." He's like, "You're just like you have a bigger frame. Your bones are big. You're dense. This could have." Broken a more slightly built person. And so what happened was I actually hyperextended the ulnar nerve in my arm. So I stretched it because I was holding the tree. And so like there's also, I don't know if it's a rhomboid, but it runs along the spine. It's part of the upper trap.
Yeah.
And there's 2 muscles layered in there, the trap, and I think it's the rhomboid maybe.
I don't know what it's called, but I know because I injured mine doing CrossFit on both sides of the spine down.
Yeah. So it's, mid back about where my finger's touching. Yeah. There's still a giant like sausage in there.
Oh, yeah. From that.
Yeah. It's okay. I'm sure the myofascial network got kind of tweaked. Yeah. And so it's all sticky. And whenever I get body work done, the therapist can find that. And they're just like, I'm like, that's just been there. I'm like, can you just make that go away?
Yeah.
But once in a while, I'll wait. Like it'll just cramp. Yeah. Like I'll get these weird.
Yeah, it's like a scar on your body.
Yeah, but my body remembers.
It wasn't cut.
Correct.
Internally.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I did go. I remember going, talking to the nurse. The nurse was someone that I knew. And Dr. Rio, the ER doc, was like, what happened? I explained it to him, and he was like, okay, and this and that. And then I went home, and the next day I woke up and I had some kind of worse, like, pins and needles. And I just think I did a little bit of like minor damage.
To
and the body healed, and I'm lucky.
All right. So because the reason why I ask is it's not that I don't tell my wife stuff. Luckily, I've been pretty good with, I've had some, I wouldn't say close calls, but I've had things not go quite the way I wanted it to, but I was okay. But she always says, like, I don't even want to hear about it because it freaks me out. Like, I'm already nervous about you doing that type of work anyway, that you telling me your story. And I'm like, oh, you know what happened? This piece went that way, and she's like, no, I don't want to hear it. So, but anyway, family. Because I personally love we were talking before we started, but I personally love that all three of your kids, with Mason being in it now, but I love that they have experience in the industry from a young age to working and then leaving, But this is just I feel like we did the tree part. If you have something you want to add, that's cool. But I just feel like that the family part, I think is one of the pillars in our lives, right? And none of it matters if we're not serving our family throughout the whole experience. So this is your time to dive in and tell the people about who you are as a dad, as a husband, what you love about it, fond experiences, maybe scary experiences with the kids doing tree work with you. Stuff like that, and anything you know.
Yeah, it's almost hard to know where to compartmentalize. Obviously being a father and exercising that creative energy that God blesses us with there's nothing like it. For those people that don't have children yet but are anticipating it, there are certain things in life that are what I call like watershed isn't even right. It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
So it's thinking. You can be an aunt or an uncle. You can be a close friend and be very tight with your nieces, nephews. And, you can stand next to that person who's the parent and think that you have a pretty good sense of what that's going to be like. But the minute that is yours and, it's kind of like you go, oh, now I see. And you know what? And there's no fault of yours. You just can't see it until you see it. You can't experience it until it's experienced. Like it's just one of those things. So the profound nature of that is one of life's richest. I have two siblings and neither one of them have kids. Now, whether they want them or not, whether they ever wanted them or not, I really don't know. They just don't.
Yeah, sure.
And, they don't. It's like, oh, they don't know what they're missing. No, they literally have no idea because we've had conversations and like, my brother would say like, I know you have kids and I know you're busy, but, and it's like, you actually have, he's got a very mathematical mind. So like, he probably looks at it as a math formula. It's like, well, I see 1 and I see 2 and A and whatever. So A minus 3 is, and he's like, I think it's this. And it's like, no, you're actually not even in the alphabet. You have no idea. So, yeah. And then having a couple kids, it doesn't get any less glorious, in my opinion. And I probably, I could have had 2 more probably,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, just,
No,
I don't think you ever, you know what? That last one, darn, I wish we didn't have that one.
No,
like,
like, you know what
I mean? Like,
yeah. People that say that, I have a few choice words for them, just so you know, but yeah.
Yeah. I do want to touch on something, and this is almost a ministry, okay? This is almost me sharing a little bit about my life for the benefit of anyone listening who is, and I'm just going to pick on the small business owner at this point, because you know what? When you have a really good support staff and you have people around and you've got a team, it's a little easier. It just is. You have people that you can delegate and like move tasks to. Now, there were times when I had climbers that could take the burden of the day-to-day grind and so forth. And that was, I can say that because that was massive having that help. And we were always a small company. The most I ever had at one time, soup to nuts, management to climbers, ground people was 12. That's the biggest I ever got, 12 people on payroll. But I just want to say to the people out there, let's just say it's a guy or a gal and, you know, you're married. So Raina, I'll just tell my story and then I'll kind of use it as a thing. My wife is a labor and delivery nurse. And we decided we were going to raise our kids, not do the daycare thing and all. And that was a choice we made. You know, it took a financial hit so that one of us could always be home. And she sacrificed sleep. Okay. She worked 7P to 7A. So she pulled 12-hour shifts. And, you know, she would have to leave the house a little after 6 to get there and get clocked in and be on the floor by 7. So, you know, a typical work day, like, you know, I'm working. I'm out doing trees, climbing trees, this, that, the other, whatever. The job's maybe sometimes even running over. And I'm like, I'm coming home in my dirty chainsaw clothes and whatever. And she's like, hey, dinner's on the stove, this, that. And she's in her scrubs, car's running. She's like, I got to roll. I'm like, okay, hug her, kiss her. She runs out the door. I'm home with my 2 girls. Mason wasn't born yet. And like without running you through the whole, and then Mason was like to go through all that, but just to say that it was an amazing time. Like looking back on, I really don't know how we did it all, because there were mornings like my guys at the time we didn't have this building were meeting at my garage. I have a 3-bay garage. So there's 2 bays, a shop and a bay over here. That was my original shop. And we just parked the tree trucks in the house driveway. So when my guys came to work, they parked in my driveway. And, you know, my wife's rolling in she gets done at 7. If she's lucky, if they didn't have a bunch of deliveries, she might be late. Well, if I'm on the crew and my kids are in bed or they're not up yet, or I'm feeding them breakfast or trying to get them ready for school, like literally when the kids were school age, I'm taking the kids to school, coming back, going out on the crew. You know, I did breakfast with them. I dressed them. I did bath times at night. I ran the business. Like there was a lot of moving parts.
And I can say I know the amount of work that is.
Yeah. And so I don't say that, again, it's not about glorifying me.
No.
Oh, he must have been an amazing dad. Hey, look, I was probably cranky, frustrated. I got to get this job done. I can't stand here. I got this big tree. Like I'm sure there was, and I know there was plenty of that.
Sure.
I'm really sharing this almost as a, hey, y'all out there dealing with all this, hang in there. Be present for your kids, right? Be present for your spouse. Make time for them. The work can wait. I'll be honest with you. I could have had a much bigger business. When the kids started doing events and sports and things, I would not go out and work on Saturday. And I took a hit financially. But you know what? The relationship I have with my kids, when I do the thing, like you said, go out and work with them, and I have a crew going out, crew A, and my B crew is me, Michaela, Madison, and Mason, and we're going out and knocking work out, and I'm watching these young people run around a job site, and I'm like, how do they even know how to do this?
Love it.
It's just, man, we have this intuitive kind of like clockwork sort of thing, and I'm like giddy the whole time. And I had a few summers like that. Madison is so Michaela's married, has 1 kid. I have a grandkid now. She's got another one on the way. She's a teacher. So the last couple summers, like last summer she didn't work. Yeah. Summer before she helped a little bit with sales. And if I get pinched and I'm like, hey, can you go trim these? She'll do some fine pruning. But Michaela did climbing. She competed 1 year. Yeah. And then Madison told me last summer they went out and they worked for one of our top clients, this woman. So Michaela and we all went out together. Okay. And Madison was like, I'm retiring after this. Oh. And I laughed.
Okay. Yeah.
I laughed. So I gotta share a funny story. She's in Tennessee. She's at Lincoln Memorial. Finished up her 3rd year down there. Now she's in her clinicals. Well, at the place she's renting, there was tree work being done. There was a storm came through. Okay. And Raina, my wife, she's like, oh, Madison said the tree crew showed up. I'm like, oh boy, do they know what they're in for? I'm like, she's going to be out there looking at their PPE. And I was like, I guarantee you. So Raina's like, you're 100% right. They showed up, no hard hats, this, that, and all. And I'm like, well, they're in the deep South. You know, they're probably like, they're just some roughnecks, man, down there making a living, you know? And I don't fault them for that, man. That's just what they knew, what they know. Right. Yeah. And I jokingly said, I said to Raina, she was on the phone. I said, ask her if maybe she should tell the guys, yo, do you want me to come out of retirement so I can show you how to do it, you know?
Oh,
so that was a laugh we
good,
had.
yeah.
Yeah. But no, man. So the girls haven't worked much recently. You know, last summer was the last time they worked. I think Michaela's, maybe she'll be mad at me. I know she's expecting right now.
Yeah, sure.
So she's doing August.
Yeah,
she's not going to go out on a tree crew right now. And even selling, like, you know, she's like, I don't want to go out there all swelled up and, you know, knocking on doors and all, but she could do it. But Mason, my son right now, he didn't want to go to college. He graduated 2 Junes ago. So this June, like the end of June, 20th, 21st, somewhere, that'll be 2 full official years, full-time working for me.
Yeah.
And he's kind of heading up the team out there, and, you know, it's a blessing. I mean, you know, there are components sometimes where you say, when you see the risk and you kind of go, I've had this conversation with, what kind of parent lets their kids do this? And then people remind me, well, they have to drive cars. That's a risk. You have to live life. That's a risk.
It's true.
And then I think about families. I don't know. Maybe this was me reconciling it in my own head. Excuse me. But I think about, there's a family called the Great Wallendas, and they're tightrope walkers.
Oh, okay.
And they've been this for generations. What they do. And you know what? There've been fatalities in the family. And I'm not suggesting, like, no matter who dies, we're not quitting. Like, I'm not that guy, right?
No.
But the point is, like, this is what they do.
What they do, yeah.
The Great Wallendas, they're tightrope walkers. We're a tree family. We're a tree, you know. You mitigate risk. You have those things. We had a safety meeting this morning because we had a little close call with a chipper that was unchocked yesterday, and it kind of rolled and hit an air conditioning unit. We escaped tragedy. It was like, you know, just some
scenario.
flashing or best case scenario. So we had a safety meeting. So I think you make them aware of the risk. You mitigate. I tell Mason, as he's learning and growing as a climber, I'm your dad, and I know you feel more expectation than I feel like I'm putting on you.
Okay.
Does that resonate?
Yeah, no, you got it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But never feel like you're going to disappoint me if you tap out on a job.
There you go.
Tap out.
Yeah.
Do not put yourself in a position where you're uncomfortable. I mean, look, yes. Do we have to stretch the balloon? Do we have to increase our capacity? Yes. But also, the time to really do that is when I'm there.
Gotcha.
And I can coach and teach and train, or when Derek's here, or yourself, or somebody that's got that higher level stuff. So, you know, being a dad, greatest creative thing I've ever done in my life. And, you know, it's not, and you know this, when you know, from stinky diapers to, you know, parent-teacher conferences, there's a lot of mess. I mean, life is messy. This is not an easy gig. My wife and I, you know, married, it's coming up on 30 years. 2026 will be 30 years. Challenges, man. Relationship, you know, working nights, sleep deprivation, running a business. Like, the woman's dealt with me and my shenanigans for over 30 years.
That's true.
And you know, my goal is to become constantly a better man, to show up better for her. Miss the mark a lot. But man, you just keep going. I come from a broken family. She comes from a broken family. We decided when we got married, we were like, hey, we looked each other in the eyes and we're like, if we're doing this, we're in it. Like, there's no fractured family here. It's not happening. So just by way of encouragement, it's more, not as much about me, people hearing what I have to say for my story's sake. But if you're sitting out there and you're in your car and you're listening, you're driving around, whatever platform you're on, and you're hearing the story, my hope is that you take encouragement. It can seem like you should quit sometime and turtle up and look, you know, whatever reasons, maybe there are situations like that. And I know that there are. And I can't speak to anything specific, you know, if there's some kind of abuse or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, if you think that schmoopy, lovey feeling that you felt when you first met and you were just smooching and kissing and loving, and That's not what gets you to 30 years. It's a nice component. It's a good component. It should be part of your thing. But like that is not, it takes work. It takes effort. You have to have conversations. You have to, I'm going off on a little tangent, but like I know there's a lot of married people. And I think the industry just, there's so much of a physical and mental component, and specifically those out there that are running these small businesses, man, where it's just you or you and a couple of guys and you're married and you're out there and you're trying to grind. It can put inordinate amount. I mean, look, Rick Yost talked about it.
Yeah.
He was not bashful about saying, I got divorced because of.
Yeah, because of the driven passion of his work ethic. And I'm glad you didn't go off on a tangent. You went exactly the way, that's kind of the whole thing. Like husband, dad, business owner, and what that challenges. That's kind of the whole point, you know what I mean? So and I appreciate the can do it about it rather than, it's fine. Because it's not fun. I know it's not fun. So much so that, because I put time in, networking, connecting with people in the industry, and pretty darn common that there's always some challenges in relationships, specifically family, you know what I mean? To the point of often enough, I'll say like, I'm happy. And it's not, let me say this, it's not that other people don't put their family first. It's just more of the survival mindset. It's like that has to be first. 'Cause I have to do this to make sure that's okay.
I think a mistake a lot of men make is that we don't think so. Women typically, okay, I'm speaking in stereotypes. Yes, old Gen X, gray-haired guy. Fine. Generally speaking, women are nurturers.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And the men, I think what we do is we over prioritize the provider role.
Yes.
So we go, well, as long, I got to provide, and you know what? And protect. And you know what? Those things are vital, but men nurture too, maybe in a different way. But if we over provide and protect at the expense of showing up present and being just sometimes that standing on the sideline at your kid's soccer game and your kid looks over and like, there's my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's, man, I think I remember the girls were in dance and they would do these dance recitals. Dude, I worked backstage. I moved scenery around and like they'd come backstage and their number was next and I'd hear the little like shoes like sliding along the floor. Hey, daddy. Like, this is why I have the relationship with my daughters I do. And you cannot, there's no amount of work that beats that. And I'll tell you, this is a little bit of an aside. I'm getting emotional here. It's shocking it took this long. So I gave a talk on time. I think you were at the one at Garden State Tree, but I also gave it at Expo one year. And one of the best conversations I had was a guy that came up after. And he was an Hispanic man. And he came up and he was like, hey, he's like, what you talked about. Because I talk in the talk and, I'm giving myself a little bit of a plug, but it's a really great talk because it talks about prioritizing our time based on our core values and principles. Yes. Okay, so if you start there and you tell your time where to go, that's what you live out. If you just wake up and go, your time will evaporate and you're not making time for the priorities in life. It's the Stephen Covey big rock, small rock model, right? You fill a jar with rocks and you put the big rocks in. Is the jar full?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No. Then the little rocks go in. Well, you start with the big rocks first. That's where you prioritize your time. Family, that's the big rock, right? So he comes up and he's like, this really hit me. I'm like, what's up? He's like, I have my own business. And I'm like, and he's a man and he's Hispanic and he's got this incredible work ethic and drive. I'm like, it'll serve you well, but it can also be your undoing. And he's like, my kid plays the piano. And he's like, I've never been to one of his recitals. And he's like, I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm crushed. And I'm like, listen, man, it's not all or nothing. I was like, does your kid, so he's like, yeah, he's got a piano teacher. And I was like, does he? And he's got lessons. And yeah, I said, if he goes once a week, go once a month and just show up at his lesson. Like in other words, it's not like I'm going to miss all this work because I'm going to all of his piano practices or whatever. But, and I could tell that hit him. And I have no doubt when he left that he reprioritized and had a shift. He thanked me for it. And I was just like, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, man, you make mistakes, and it's like, if you're willing to be upfront and open and just go, hey, man, I screw up. Can I tell you about the time I screwed up? And maybe when you're faced with this decision, look, sometimes we got to bloody our own nose, and we got to salve our own wounds, and that's okay. But if someone can tell us something, we go, you know what? I remember Brick saying this. I'm not doing that.
Absolutely.
It's funny. We'll do it with a technique. Hey, one time I was cutting this and that and this, and it sprung back and it this and that. And you're like, really? What was the scenario? And I'll make note of it. And then I won't do it on a job site because it makes sense. But life advice, I'm just going to go, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I know it is wild that, let's say parallel, like people have a hard time. It's easy when it's not, your whole wellness attached to it, meaning it's just a task, fine. But then there's emotion, physical, mental state. Then you're like, well, but this is how I do things or whatever. No, I appreciate you sharing that because like I said, I feel, I don't want to say the majority, but masculine production oriented industry.
Oh yeah.
Right.
For the most part, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the origins of it, just how it is, and things are changing or whatever. But and the way society is, things are expensive now. Your kids are older than mine, but like the way things are going, the kids are going to be they're going to be home for a long time. I'm cool with it. It's not a big deal, but I just have it in my head. Like, you're not buying a house at 18 or 21, 20. It's not going to happen at this time. But the challenge of being, a man or woman in a marriage with kids and stuff, the challenge of doing the thing that needs to be done to provide security, often there's always a conflict of availability. And that's the dance that we have all the time. That is the dance. Yeah, that's the dance the whole time. Even me, like, I work for a municipality, but luckily I worked really hard for 10 years, my own business, and situated things in a way where I don't have to work after 3:30. But as soon as I'm done, you know this too. It's this sport, that practice, this for I coach, my wife coaches it. And it's just a dance all day long, and it is frustrating sometimes. You're like, I just want to sit home and watch TV, but no.
How dare you?
How dare you? Exactly. Since when do you do that? Yeah. But you've been doing it for a long time. That's why I feel like the listeners listening to it, whether they're owners, managers, or even workers, will benefit from this. Because, even Ricky Hughes, like, it's a common thread across the board.
And listen, by the way, I mean, just, I do get DMs once in a while, and I do my best to answer them. I don't have like that many followers really, but I always say, like, I had a guy DM me, message me the other day about praying for him. He's on my list. We're working through it. If I feel like I can offer if someone DMs me about this subject, I'm gonna push.
Dive.
I'm gonna push in. I'm gonna lean in.
So
that's when I can, I'm available. Like, I don't know what'll happen if I ever get to like some big follow. Like, I'm sure it could for some people. I know Kevin Ham's got like 30,000 followers. Like, I'm sure that if a couple of those people DM him, all of a sudden you're doing 10 DMs. It's a little difficult to keep up.
Yeah, sure.
But for now, like the way it is. And that's kind of what I hope the podcast is, and that's why I wanted to start that little feature too, because if we're putting some content out into the ethos, into the atmosphere that is beneficial, and someone can listen and go, all right, listen, this guy's talking about prioritization of time. Maybe that's something I need to think of. And it's so easy. My mechanic is dealing with it. He's so in demand right now. There's no shortage of things breaking down. Okay. And it's hard because his name's Buster, and I absolutely love him, and Mason's friend with his kid, and we love him. Like as a family, we love those people, right? Yeah. And it's hard to watch him. It's hard to watch somebody that you care about that way suffer through that growing pain phase. Yeah. There's really nothing I can do to help him. I can be there, be flexible, talk to him when he needs it, whatever. But I'm a little bit older than him. But like, look, there's been times I had no help.
Yeah. Fun time.
That gets to be a challenge. So, it's just putting the stuff out there, man, and just, hoping somebody that it resonates, that it helps, We have to feel our own pain sometime to grow, but if we can help someone at least strategize or come up with something valuable,
No, definitely. And, which is my follow up to that is what your origin of this podcast.
Oh yeah,
well, you know what I mean, because it's a perfect segue.
Yeah. So I mean, we've talked about it, you and I, in episode 1. If you haven't seen that, where just Brick and I literally, the way that we have the room set up now, we were sitting over here at the desk. And we talked about, so I would encourage you, go back and listen to episode 1, and that'll really start the ball rolling.
Yeah, sure.
But just to sort of tie into that and just reiterate it here, I mean, realistically, I'm lucky that I do have that curiosity, and that one of the most meaningful things in my life in terms of this trade has been conversations I had. And you heard me mention the hallway conversation. So the hallway conversation to me is thematic about going to events, whether it's, a seminar, a teaching event where it's a smaller thing. Like yesterday, we were doing a setup for NJTCC. A smaller group than going to a thing with 3,000 other people. Yeah, sure. So you see familiar faces, smaller group. Maybe there was 20 people there. But what I've realized is that I have people that I know and that I recognize from just repeated events of going. And what's cool to me is at 60, at 40 some years in, at 30 some years into going to events, I'm still meeting new people, and I'm still wanting to engage, and I'm still wanting to have conversations and ask them questions about what's your life experience say. And when I think about in terms of some of the relationships I have, like with you, like here we are, this has become a pretty deep, like a brotherhood, right? Like you and I, and it was a completely crazy, honest thing. It's like, I won't call it like a withdrawal, but we had a gap and we had an extra week because we had a fifth Friday. So it was an extra week, and I'm just like I gotta, we gotta catch up. We gotta,
definitely.
Yeah. But also making space for that other your life, the main part of your life, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep.
And now at 60, with Mason being my youngest at 20, I can actually take a nap.
Okay. Yeah.
Like for whatever years, I didn't take a nap. For 20 friggin' years, I didn't take a nap. 25 years, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the origin is that, taking a step back and looking at life and going, you know what? A couple of my best friends in life came through this tree thing, this brotherhood. And now I've got meaningful relationships almost around the globe. Like just people that I know, like I'll mention a guy like Stefano, you know him from Cask.
Yeah.
So now him and I aren't, like, he and Mark are friends.
Right, exactly.
Mark's going over and talk. And I've benefited from that relationship just by being sort of, one of Mark's friends. But man, when I see him or we exchange a message on social media, I know that he's smiling, and when we do catch up, I'm blessed by it. And so, the genesis of this is, obviously the conversation that you and Todd and I had in Atlantic City at the Garden State Tree Conference was really probably the I would say the, man, this needs to happen moment. But the idea of somehow trying to figure out how to make this happen, the minute podcasts started to happen and they probably before they even really became popular. I mean, this is 5 years ago, probably,
Okay.
at least. And then I think just, you have these moments where things begin to galvanize.
Yeah.
And I remember I have a problem sometimes where I'll put things off. And I'm putting things off and I'm watching podcasts pop up and I'm like, I had this idea and I sat on it, and then God just teaching me like, listen, you have an idea, just stop talking about it and just act.
Yeah,
And I talk about, this is maybe another good thing for the listeners. If you're listening right now and you have an idea for anything, piece of gear, piece of clothing, concept for a podcast, a new way to make money, a new service or product within your business that you want to, talking about it's important. Moving is way more important. There's a quantum leap between thought and deed. Right? So sat here and we talked and I was worried about perfection. Like, I can't roll this out until this is in order and this is in order. And here we are in the office that I'm supposed to be in. Yeah. Never in here. So now it's the podcast room.
I love it.
And we just started rolling. And I mean, fortunately, we have Ben's professionalism and his attention to detail, and he takes care of the business that needs to be taken care of, and we take care of the conversation. But yeah, man, if you have an idea, you just have to act. And now we've acted, and we weren't perfect, and we aren't perfect, but we're moving target now. We have momentum. There's energy. There's synergy. And, the second side of it is we've been talking about building the studio. Well, now, I don't know if you saw the stack of milled wood in there. Okay,
yeah,
so then if you look up there, you'll see Doug's tools are up there.
Okay.
So the idea is now we get a rain day, Doug and Mason and maybe one of the other guys will start framing out up there. So don't let the perfection of a thing be the stopping force behind starting. Like, in other words, don't let the idea of like, I have to have this right.
Yeah.
I call it the law. It's like, it's the law of inertia. It's inertial friction. It's like, it's way easier to move imperfectly and adjust your movement as you're moving than it is to stay stationary, wait for perfection, and then move.
It sounds counterintuitive, though. Yeah. So but if it's perfect, then everything will be easy. And it's like, but it'll never happen because nothing's perfect.
Here's one. I'll bring it into tree terms. Do you ever roll a long log or a drum?
Yeah.
So is it easier to start it rolling toward your target and kind of move it as it's moving?
Yeah.
Or start it moving in the first place?
Start it moving in the first place. Yeah.
Well, what I'm saying is in other words, it's easier to adjust it as it's moving than it is to break free from the initial,
okay, I see. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
From the ground friction.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm moving, it's rolling, and I just kind of hit it. It's like moving like moving a limb that's in motion.
Yeah.
How come I can put my hand on a 4,000 pound crane pick and move it?
Yeah.
It's already moving.
You're just helping, assisting. Yeah.
It's changing direction. It's Tai Chi. It's Tai Chi.
That is one of the things on there, but I think I want to, because like I said, for the listeners, they kind of know the origin story, but that's why I want to dive in a little bit more just to see if there's something underneath, Is it fair to say that you pretty much want to be a steward of people having more connections?
I think that
we naturally already have at these events and everything else. And you're like, you know what? I want to be a steward for that by offering a space, bring a guest in, and just pretty much capture what already happens anyway. We're just putting it on, a weird medium that more people can be like, it's like a fly on the wall kind of thing, right? There you
That's
go.
it. And I had, I've been blessed by some conversations we've been having, now getting some feedback. I was at Pendel, climbing comp, helping with the Ascent event.
Yeah.
And some of the conversations I had, people listening, super grateful for the listenership, more so for the exchange though, right? Because now I have something, it's like, hey, so yeah, if there's something that you hear, and a couple of things I heard were like, hey, I'm a guy who feels things and senses things, and we work in a tough business. It's nice that there's a forum and there's other guys talking about,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know exactly.
And it's like I said to you, I don't know if I said this on here. I made a post about it. I'm like, listen, I love it. I laugh at myself because, I'm a martial artist. I have been for a long time. I've done combat things, and you heard in my story, I've been in my share of rubs back in the day, so to speak, whatever. I don't say that to pound my chest. My point is this, and we've talked about this as dads and protectors, you have to be capable of violence. You have to be capable as a protector to bring a high level of violence. Okay. But also I love kitten videos.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Look, man, I can see Tatey right now driving this car going, oh, brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tatey would never watch a kitty video. And it's okay, Mike.
It's okay, buddy. You can be a little soft.
He's like one of the most masculine dudes I know. I love him to death.
Same.
I just do, man. But no, what I say is like, I love the flowers, and I love the fall color, and I love to read, and I love a good, deep feeling, thinking poetry. I love reading Thoreau and Viktor Frankl and Hermann Hesse, and I like to dive deep with Glenn about books. And so what I say is the male palette is wide open. Like we don't have to be one particular sort of kind of way.
Yeah.
We can be capable of high levels of violence and be protectors and be hardcore guys that do amazing things in the trees and so forth, and lift heavy things and do things that are crazy. And, I think about me, back in the day, like jumping off train bridges. Like we would go along rivers and swim and find like these holes over the train trestle bridges up on the upper Delaware and stuff, and jump, 60 feet off the tops into the river, and jumping off these cliffs, but also be able to say, to hug your daughter or put, Cinderella on and sit there and watch Cinderella with your kids. Like, I think we shouldn't limit ourselves as men.
Yeah.
Like we have the full palette available to us. So if you're out there listening, you're like, oh, somewhere there's another guy thinking the same thing,
Yeah.
Oh, can I really admit that I.
Yeah, no, I do. I know exactly what you're saying. It's I don't know, feel like a better way of saying it, but it's almost like it's sensitive side. Yeah. But it's not. I don't consider it to be a sensitive side. But I think people see it that way, and that's why they're like, well, no, standoffish about the whole thing, But meanwhile, you're well rounded, and if you're well rounded, you're well, like your wellness. Like that's the whole thing. But if you're only one side because you're worried about people thinking the stuff, you don't thrive. So that's why I love the feedback you've been getting this last.
It's been amazing.
It's been great.
And I mean, I see some of that as there's a guy, Lewis Howes, wrote a book called The Mask of Masculinity.
Okay, yeah.
And I started listening to it. I didn't get through the whole thing. I don't know why. There were parts of it I didn't resonate with, but I think ultimately that whole. Like, there's a male posture, there's a male presence, we're carrying ourselves. And look, there's an element of protection in that, just, sure. The nod, the, hey, how you doing? I'm not going to meet some new person and be, hey, have you seen the new princess movie or whatever? What the hell is this? Right? I mean, there's a time and a place, right? Yes. We have to know our audience. We have to, we're not going to just willy-nilly open up to some stranger and tell them our life story. Yeah, I mean, there's, like you said earlier, read the room.
Yeah,
this is why these relationships are important. I can go here with you because we've invested the time.
Exactly.
There's no judgment. There's no fear of like, oh my God, what if, like,
Yeah,
what a soft little pansy, you know, or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
But I think a band of brothers is vital for a guy. There are certain, this is me getting into a little bit of life philosophy, but like, and a lot of people may not agree. A lot of people may not agree with this because this is a decidedly divided role thing within a marriage. You know, if my wife is looking to me for one particular type of leadership, and she's my equal, right? We're good. I mean, we're good. We're solid. She's able to do so many things. She doesn't need me complaining about every bloody thing and opening up to her about every bloody fear that I have and this and that. And, you know, I want my man to be sensitive. Okay, I get it. You want to know he's capable of sensitivity toward your needs and the children and things like that. But she doesn't need to hear me. And it's something I had to actually learn because I think I was a little too stream of consciousness at some times where I was, this and that, and I'm worried about this and I'm that. And all of a sudden, you know, she's like, whoo, well, that's where the band of brothers comes in. You know, if I call you and I'm like, bro, man, the Lyme is kicking my ass this week. You're like, I tell me what's going on. Yeah. Now, I don't want to, the thing I want to be sensitive to, I don't want to drag you into a hole with me, but I want to be able to, but I would also count on you to go, hey, enough.
Man up. Yeah. It's that,
okay. You know, just, are you okay? Because I've been sensing you've been stuck. Right.
Yeah, good. Right.
You've been stuck here for a while. Like,
no.
What are you doing to get yourself out of it?
But, and I just to add to it, like, no, I'm with you, but we created that to where if you do seem to drag me, I'm going to tell you immediately.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, like it's
that's
just like, listen, man, this is the third time we're talking about it. What are you going to do about it now?
Correct.
Like, it's cool. Come on.
Right.
We're homies, right? If we're homies, then you go ahead and take my word for like, oh, cool, gotcha. You level up or whatever it is, you know? So, but no, the band of brothers, if you don't mind, like, I just had this conversation with Desmond.
100%.
The concept is, there's always the male, female, you know, who's supposed to do what, sensitivity and this and that. And I'm like, dude, none of that matters. The whole thing it comes down to is that it's two people having an agreement. And then the agreement, whatever you divvy up the agreement based on the situation. One person might have, the man goes to work, wife stays home. No, like my wife and I, she goes to work, I go to work. Maybe woman works from home, man is stay home mom, or stay home dad. But you know what I mean? So I told Desmond, I was like, the problem, in my opinion, comes from, again, going back into warrior days. The warrior's job is to train and protect the country, which inevitably protects his family, right? The warrior doesn't have time to be sensitive. And I don't mean, but I mean sensitive to the spouse. I'm saying the warrior's got time to train to do something that's life or death, right? Now, when war is over, now the warrior can attend to his spouse. You see what I mean? So the spouse, like, can you help with this? Of course I'll help with it. Why wouldn't I? I'm not training for war. I'm not training to get a life or death situation. We don't have that. I mean, we still have, you know, fighting war, but within the people that don't serve the country, we don't have that anymore. So, but for lack of a word, but men still try to take that and say, well, I shouldn't have to do this. I'm a man. And I say, whoa, time. Are you going to war? Because if you're going to war, we're warriors, we'll talk. That's fine. But are you going to war? Are you in a life or death situation? Well, no. Okay. So you turn around and talk to your spouse a completely different way.
Yeah.
Don't do that, because that's not how it works.
No, I agree.
You know?
Yeah, no,
so,
100%.
Yeah, so my point is, the reason why I brought that up is like, that's the band of brothers. That's how we keep each other in that check. You know?
Yes.
If we're getting ready for war, the five of us, whoever the five are, we got each other. We're going to help prepare. But war's over. It's like, cool, what do you need? Oh, you need that? Cool, I got you. Hey, you know, Mark, what do you need? You know what I'm saying? And Mark's like, I'm having a hard time here, you know, and people know, but I just went through with Tracy with cancer. I needed strong men in my life. It's probably the cat, right? I needed strong men in my life, right? I didn't need people being like, oh, this is baloney and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. Like, that's not, you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, so 100%.
That's why the band of brothers is important, but only in that way. Not in the way that sucks. Yeah.
No. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. 100%. Yeah, totally not a
Put it this way, Band of Brothers is almost uncomfortable when things are not going well.
Dude, it's the Diamond Dogs.
The Diamond Dogs. That's perfect.
It's like that. It's like, no, I don't want yes men.
No, it's exactly.
No, I don't want. I would expect. Listen, man. Here's the way I'll equate it to martial arts. It's like you're training, and I'm doing a block, right? I'm doing some kind of block, and my guy's giving me this half-ass effort, and we're talking, and we're kind of just doing the block.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're not helping me at all.
Yeah.
You're not sharpening me a bit. You're giving me a half-assed effort, a half-assed attack, right?
Yeah.
The only way I get better is if you come at me. Now, obviously, we're not trying to kill each other. There's always a thing you go about 70% effort when you're training in school. You're not trying to rip each other's heads off.
Yeah.
And so like we do that kicking class on Friday night still, and say we're doing 10 reps. You'll do say the first 3, you're getting your distance and you're just popping the target a little bit. The second set of 3, you'll ramp up a little more. The second set of 3, maybe 2 of those, you'll go about 85%. You'll drill it in there, but your guy's holding the target. So you're not trying to like rupture the guy's spleen through the target.
Exactly, yeah.
So you just pop, and then the last one, you just kind of get your form in it. So, I say that to say like, we want to help each other get better.
Yeah.
I don't need you to tell me what a great job I'm doing. Oh, your wife's an idiot. Why does she act like that? Like we're comparing notes and it's a woe is me fest.
Yes.
No.
Exactly.
I don't need agreement. You know what? There's a thing, Dennis Prager, clarity over agreement. It's like
you say
clarity over agreement.
Okay.
And that's more for like a discussion. Like it's better to have clarity over agreement. In other words, we don't have to agree, but let's be clear on what each other.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Got it.
So like if I say to you, hey, this and this is what's going on with my wife and I, here's what happened. And you think it's on me, I want to know.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I'll come to you with things about like relationship stuff, like other people, like, this happened, this comment was made, this,
the experience,
whatever, it's a social media thing. What do you think about? Well, this is where I think it's coming from. I wouldn't respond. Okay. I'm just going to let it bake.
Exactly.
I'll deal with my own feelings.
Exactly.
I'm a man. I can do that. That's good.
Yeah. No, it was cool. Yeah. So I there was a couple of things I had in there. There's 2 last ones, right? It's 2 last ones.
Yeah, that's cool.
The way I have it phrased is, since you are older, with your past experience, what's a good way that you've learned how to calm yourself down and deal with situations is one. And the last thing would be, it's like a public service announcement, right? And this is your opportunity to, the industry, you're speaking to Mason's group of the industry now. That's how I look at it. It's like, what is it that you want to impress on them to be essentially the next generation of the tree industry group of people, and maybe uphold the standards or whatever. But those are 2. Like one, and the calm down part is because I feel like for, again, owners, management, and workers, being able to calm down is a good way to be able to connect and actually have meaningful conversation, but also come to solutions to problems.
Yeah, that is a really good one. And what's interesting is, in full transparency, because if my son, my kids, my wife, or anybody that actually knows me hears this, I want to make sure they're getting the truth. I am by nature a volatile person. I'm not going to say I have anger issues. That's not it. But I'm easily frustrated by the small things at times. Okay. I don't have a capacity. So if one thing comes at me, or 2 things, or even 3 things, say in the morning when the guys are getting ready, that I can navigate through. But when it comes at me sideways from 5 different directions, I quickly will have an overload in my neural network. Like I just, for whatever reason, it's just been an issue with me my whole adult life. So I'm framing this out. Another side of it is I struggle with injustice that I see, and I want to physically, I say this with half humor, I want to physically assault people that oppress others for some, like, or they say something. I just want to like hurt them, grab, you know, like what is your problem? Okay. Yeah. So this is my nature. Thankfully, God has put a heart of flesh in me, and it's a work in progress. Okay. So all those things, and on the road, all bets are off. You know, some days I'm great, other days not so much. Yeah. Okay. So it's been a life's work. And I just want to be clear, like, I'm an older guy and I do have some decidedly effective strategies, and I'm going to share them. But also know, anybody listening, you will never, if you think, or if your goal is to arrive, first of all, if you don't enjoy the journey, you're missing it. It is the journey. Enjoying the journey is the richness of life. There is no destination, really. You're learning, you're growing, you're building relationships, and you're wringing the richness of life out of this very present moment right here, right now. There's nothing more important going on right now in my life than this. And then when we're done, it's the next thing, but not until it's the next thing. So that's a bit of huge advice. But what I can say is, from a technique standpoint, a couple things have really helped. And I mentioned to this earlier. And there's science now to back it up about meditation, taking, and whatever that looks like for you. I'll do a guided one from YouTube. I had an app for a while called Headspace. Literally just taking that 10 minutes that you never feel like you have. But I promise you, if you invest that 10 minutes, the 10 minutes isn't going to fix you. What's going to fix you is 10 minutes played out over a 30-day period. You will start to get a sense of the fact that you are not your thoughts or your emotions, and that you can decide. I say a stimulus happens. You touched your hand to the stove, or someone says an offhanded comment, right? So the stimulus comes. There's a nanosecond in between that stimulus and your response. If you can stretch that period out and slow it down and not react right away, you're going to be a lot more effective. That you can just pause for a second. So there's a couple things. Maybe I get a client complaint, or maybe a client will call. I'll use a client. Client calls, oh, you missed XYZ branch. I'm like, well, it wasn't on a proposal. Well, she said you talked about it. Well, I talked about $10,000 worth of work, and I wrote up a $2,000 bid. So a lot of what was talked about didn't wind up on the proposal. Did they read it? Oh, well, she said, when you were here, you said you were. So I can get what are they, like, don't they read? I don't know. Frustration. So let's just say that's one example. Maybe it's not a great one. I don't need to respond right this minute. So the information comes maybe 3:00 on a Friday afternoon. Maybe I just let it cook over the weekend. I deal with my emotions, and then I call them back. Now there's another side of that. You can just deal with it right away too. You can call, hey, Mrs. Jones, heard you're unhappy, blah, blah, blah. So you can eat the frog. That's something you can do. But I think sometimes it's, if we're, I guess what I'm really saying is, we don't want to respond in an elevated emotional state. If we sense in our spirit that we're worked up, and your initial thing is that's not the platform to come at it from. You need to regulate your emotions down to where you're calm and you can have a dialogue before you respond. That goes with your spouse, it goes with a coworker, goes with an employee. What the work is your problem? And all of a sudden now there's an argument ensues, and you're elevated and they're emotional, and it's not good. But I would say that the meditation is work that you can do that as it's coming at you. I just watched a TED Talk the other day where the lady was like, oh, I never believed in that. And then read this study that the actual physical measurement of the prefrontal cortex, they did a study of whatever the group of people was and a control study, and they did it for 100 days. It actually physically grew. And I don't know if this is the amygdala, but the rear part of got smaller. So your higher function and reason through meditation got bigger, which means your capacity, it's lighting up the front of the brain, and you have a capacity for more reasoning and logic, which helps you, get through
have solutions to
it
problems.
Can increase your capacity.
Yeah. Nice.
So those are a couple things. The other thing is sometimes you have to just let yourself, I'll say, all right, I'll go. You have to move quickly from frustration to problem solving. Okay. Now, you can sit there and bake in it. I can't believe, woe is me, now this, and cash flow stinks, and the bills, and I can't believe, or everything's always breaking. I got the truck down, the Mini's down. I own 2 of these. I'm talking from experience.
Yeah, exactly.
I have 2 loaders. Both loaders are down. I have the in a pinch, the tractor would work, but that's at the shop, and I don't understand. And why isn't? Okay, that's great. You know what? Is that helping me move the debris that needs to get moved? Okay, so what are your solutions? So I have to say to myself sometimes, it's like you could almost set a timer. I'm going to give myself 5 minutes to be Mr. Poopy Pants and go off and say all the things that I need to say to get it off my chest. And then that's it. Done. You've given yourself all the time you need to be Poopy Pants. Now it's time to move to solution. So I don't know if they call that the refractory period, the stimulus comes, the frustration and anger rises up. You don't necessarily have to squash it and white knuckle through it. Acknowledge it. Wow, I feel angry right now. Why do I feel angry? Have a conversation with yourself. Where do these feelings come from? Why does this frustrate me so much? And what I've been coming to is I realize that a lot of my frustration on the team comes from, and it's a pretty immature thing, but I realize I don't like looking like a fool or a man without answers in front of my team. That's complete ego.
No, that's definitely, yeah.
So it's okay, you know what? It's okay for me not to have an answer.
Beautiful.
It's okay. It's all right. Maybe I don't look like a fool to them. Maybe I just feel like I do. Because of something I have going on inside of me, because some unhealed scar I have, right? But it's kind of going, all right, you know what, guys, suggestions? I don't have an answer. I got logs over here. I got no loader. And you know what? Maybe one of them goes, dude, why don't we just cut and quarter it up and just go over and just load it by hand? We'll take all 5 guys over. Okay, great. Do it. Take care of it. Done. Off the table. So a big part of it is just acknowledging, and
acknowledgement brings it awareness.
It does.
And then you have an opportunity to do something about it with awareness.
And again, I think a part of it is just doing a little deep dive, knowing, and the meditation helps, but just knowing that you, Ben, we are not our emotions and thoughts and feelings. We're just not. That's not who that is not the seat of consciousness. It's just not. That's not our spirit, right? And I love this. I learned this by a visual thing I saw on Headspace where they had the little cartoon character, literally standing on the curb at a busy intersection, and it's buses and trucks and cars, and they're going by. And it's this is your feelings and emotions. Every car is a thought. Every truck is an emotion. And it's just, are you going to step into that?
There you go.
Are you going to step into the traffic, or are you going to stay the observer on the side? Acknowledge, go, okay, you know what? I acknowledge that it was like you and I having a talk earlier about a specific individual. And I'm like, I see something. I feel something. Yeah. Now, in the past, as a more immature person, I might react
to it. Yeah.
And now I go, okay, you know what? I don't like that I feel this way. I should be more, no, you're allowed to feel it. Okay, I acknowledge that I feel it. Okay, well, now what? And then name it. Well, it's frustration. Is it jealousy? No. It's, and as you begin to unpack that, it starts to actually lose its power.
Exactly, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm cool. I can feel that. I don't have to act on it. Nobody even has to really know how I feel. I don't have to share this with the world. And so it sort of starts to lose its power a little bit.
Yeah.
So those three things, it's the meditation, it's increasing capacity, it's allowing yourself to have a minute.
Yeah.
It's okay, go ahead, and then move to solution. And then the third one, I think, is having a conversation with yourself, because that will bring awareness that it's okay to feel that. What am I feeling? And ask the questions. What is it? It's anger. Okay, yeah, but that's a surface feeling. That's usually the first thing a guy feels. Is anger. It's like, okay, but that's coming from somewhere. Let's dig a little deeper. And as you do that, it dissipates. So that's one. The second question about the kids, I think, because
not so much the kids. It's more. I'm
young
using
people?
Mason because he's 2 years in now.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about that generation.
Yep.
That public service announcement. You know what I mean? Because I'd like to think the podcast will eventually reach them.
I hope so.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not an Aging Arborist podcast for aging old people. I still get that sometimes. I'm like, please understand, guys. Like, guys are like, I'm an Aging Arborist. I'm like, so is my 20-year-old son.
Exactly.
We're all on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do with the time you're given?
Yeah. So that's why I'm using that. Everybody that's listening to it can benefit from it. But I wanted to see what you would come up specifically. Just imagine talking to Mason, obviously, but like everybody in Mason mindset group, because we were saying earlier, these kids don't want to work anymore. It's just a different generation. Not better, not worse. It's just they operate differently.
Listen, man, it's like I said earlier. I was proud of the team, and I want to dispel that myth that this generation doesn't want to work. You know what? They all work. They worked in the rain. They worked through the rain. They went home cold.
Yeah.
And guess what? The one kid, VJ, the newest kid, he came in the next day with a waterproof coat because it rained again the next day. So he learned. Yeah. So he was like, I went home and I was cold. And I didn't say good, but in my mind, I was like, okay, well, and you know what? This is not me being an old man, cocky, whatever, but it's like, and you survived. Yeah. And you went home and you ate and you showered, and it's like, probably felt good. Like, I survived it. Mm-hmm. And then he learned a lesson, which is a valuable life lesson. Absolutely. About preparation and showing up. So if I'm gonna give them, honestly, we could rewind this, and if we just went through the journey and you hit on those key points that you did in your testimonial and me in mine today, mm-hmm. some pillars are, oh boy, cat's gonna we got cats in here. It's like gonna puke or something. That's great. Okay. We're live. Yeah. There's an authenticity. Yeah. Ben's like, what do I do with that? I got to edit this out. The cat's vomiting now. Let's just leave it in, Ben. It's all good.
It's entertainment.
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's perfect because we've encapsulated so much of it here today. It's like, okay, young people listening, next generation, you're coming into this trade, but I'm going to say any trade, anywhere you show up. Anywhere you show up in this world, whether it's to help someone move a piece of furniture, you're helping a friend change a tire, bring your best effort. Not necessarily, well, yes, in service and in servitude, yes. But what is it saying about you? What type of person do you want to be? This is an exercise I do some mornings. I wake up and I go, how do I want to show up today? How do I want to show up for my team? I want to show up as a leader. I want to show up as someone compassionate. I want to show up with empathy. What are the qualities that make a human being human and able to be relatable? I want to show up as a mentor. I want to teach, train, these type of things. So I don't think because you're young, you can't show up that way. But I would say you bring your best effort because you're developing habits, like you mentioned, and you're building a foundation of who you are. Are you a person that wants to bring half effort and live a mediocre, average life? And this is the habit you're building, and this is the direction you're going in. And then several years from now, you've got more invested in half efforts and half-assed life, or you're going to show up and be the best. It sounds cliche and a little foo-fooey, but It is literally the best you can be. You owe it to you and to those in your life that you're showing up for. The other side of it is just consistently learning, consistently striving, taking in information. Find someone who's, look, here's another thing. I think YouTube is great. I think you can learn a lot. I have. There's something in my mind that is lost where in our day, the trades, the knowledge was given hand to hand. So there was a rapport that was built. There was a relationship. Like you heard me talk with reverence about Stan Wrigley. Now, does Stan Wrigley do everything right? Do they wear chainsaw pants and hard hats? And no, they don't. And by today's standard, you know, I wouldn't want to work that way. However, the man showed me and taught me a lot about things and life, and he did it person to person, one to one, right? Yeah, no, so engage. Don't be afraid to. Also, don't be afraid of who you have to thank. So I think some of it is, I taught myself. I'm self-taught. You hear that a lot. I'm self-taught. Does that somehow give you status that you're self-taught? What do you mean you're self-taught? You looked it up online? You're self-taught. You looked up, you read the book. Someone wrote the book. Someone made the video. You're not actually self-taught. You're learning by standing on the shoulders of giants. Someone has come before you in this trade. Honor it. It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. You don't have to be the inventor and author of all things. So it's coming with a sense of humility. It's coming with a huge sense of curiosity that hopefully you never lose. And I'm blessed. That is one of my most favorite things about me. Okay. Is that I'm curious. And I maintain almost like a childlike curiosity of like when I see someone do something in a tree that I haven't seen, I'm like, what is that? I want to know. Can you show me that? If I go, it's cool, and I'm embarrassed because I don't know, I don't learn a thing. I've closed my hand to the whole thing. So it's staying curious. It's continually learning to the day they put you in the ground. Do not stop ever. And then the third pillar of that would be the engagement, the relationships. You're building a network. Show up honorable and be honorable in all your engagements. Be a person of your word. Be kind. Bring a smile. You know, all the things that may seem cliche, but it's like, no, it's not. And you know what? Not everybody does. I'm not saying be a phony. You know, if you're feeling it, don't fake it. You know, have some integrity. Show up as your authentic self. If you don't understand something, ask a question. But I think if it's the three things, it's constantly being a student, you know, learning, networking, growing your network, engaging, building deep, meaningful relationships in your life. That is the richness of life. And that goes from your spouse to your kids all the way to the friends and your colleagues in your thing. And then the third one, I forget what it was. I said it, but
yeah, no. So you touched on a lot of good things. I think it's a good one. The one thing I would add, which is kind of like you said like, oh, I did it all myself. Like somebody wrote the book, somebody did YouTube or whatever. But the key thing to add is, at least on the tree working part of the work industry, PhD and, you know, the other avenues aren't as physically demanding, you know, as tree work, tree climbing and stuff. But at least on that end, embrace the suck. Because I feel like that's also lost. It's like, this is so cool. I want this. And then as soon as they hit the first hard day, you're going to go home. It's going to suck. I get it. But guess what? You got to come back. You know?
Yeah, 100%. And I love you saying it. And I always go to, because, you know, and this is what I think part of our relationship is why we resonate, is like, we understand it's the tree thing, but boy, it's the metaphor. It's the metaphor for life. Yeah, it is. Right?
100%. Yes.
You know, did it, quote, suck? Yeah. You know, when Raina worked and nights and this and that, and people come, it was hard to navigate through all that. But boy, oh boy, the experience, you know, the learning, the you know, going through that with your spouse and raising your kids, and, you know, life is not it's not meant to be easy.
No.
It's not easy. There are major struggles and suffering and pain and loss. And we showed you before, like, turtling up. I have two options. I can tortoise up, turtle up, get in my fetal position and stick my thumb in my mouth and just wish it to go away.
No.
It's not going away.
No,
so what are your choices?
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to build some emotional calluses going through some really uncomfortable things.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I haven't gone through anything like you with your spouse having cancer. I just so that's one of those things I'll never know. And I hope I never do.
Yeah,
okay. But you're on the other side of it now. And it's like I say, man, I walked out of the building this morning after 3 days of rain and cold, and I saw the sun, and I thought, wow, man. Now, would I feel the same way if it was 3 days of sun? Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah.
It was
the same.
extra special this morning.
It is. Yeah.
And I'm sure with you guys getting back into a flow, and you just go home at night, and like when it's all done and you're kind of hugging her and you put your feet up for a minute just to know you got to start over again tomorrow. But to have that moment where you look and you're like, she's healthy now.
Yeah, dude. It's wild.
There's got to be a sweetness in that is just beyond words.
Correct. Indescribable for sure. Yeah, to the point I don't even say anything. Yeah, that's the thing. Don't just enjoy it. You know what I mean? Because then tomorrow starts and then the hoopla starts again. You know what I mean? But no, you're spot on. I will say that everything that everybody goes through, it is their worst thing they're going through. Comparing it to somebody else's what looks like worse, it's not. Like it doesn't do you justice to do that.
I agree.
Meaning, so I know you've had some bad times. Exactly. You know what I mean? So I'll use like my wife, Tracy, cancer, and then my cousin having challenges with baseball. His world in his life at that moment, like it's the worst thing that's happening to him. It is equivalent to the same worst thing I'm going through, just not comparison. If you put two stories, it'd be like this, I'll take this one over this one,
right?
But not realizing you're in his shoes. That is his whole life. Like all he knows is baseball. You know what I mean? And he's like, that's all I've been doing since I was 4 years old. Like this is all I do. My life is baseball. I have project to be doing baseball. His life is crumbled. My life also crumbled. You know what I mean? So when you put it that way, that's what I try to tell people. It's not that my situation is worse. It is story-wise, but experience. Like if I'm in your shoes, I heard a saying. I don't know how accurate it is, but the idea is like if everybody were to throw their problems in a pile, you would be real quick to pull your own problems back. And I believe it's a football player's mom said that to him or something. And the idea is that because it's so familiar.
Yeah.
That's why.
It's the known.
As soon as you're in an unknown and you have this new pain, nobody wants that. So you're going to take your own problems back immediately. You know what I'm saying? So,
I've done that where I'll be walking down the street and like say in Philly and I just see some random dude in a suit and all. And I just, for fun, I just kind of almost like that, play that mental game. Like, I wonder what that person's life is like.
Yeah, sure.
Look at that car. I wonder what that is. Is he this? Is he that? And I go, would I trade the unknown for the known? Exactly. I mean, it's never yes.
Yeah, it's never no. I mean,
but it's like, I don't know. Maybe maybe he's very sick.
Yeah.
Maybe like you have no idea.
You have no idea. Exactly.
And so it's like, no, I'll stick with what I've got.
Yeah. So I think this is a good way to. That's why I brought up the suck. You know what I mean? Like everything you said is perfect, but like that's why I do. I'm kind of braggadocious about it, but I'm really good with energy and body language more than I am with the English language.
Understood, and I can see why. Yeah. And
that I love Mason's energy. Like his energy, his willing to work, the work ethic. Like he's still got a lot to figure out. I mean, he's a growing. I'm not going to call him a boy, but let's call him a young adult. But he's a growing man.
Agreed.
You know, and you know, I've had an experience with a kid. My son's 10, and that's the Band of Brothers. Like he's coming up to the Band of Brothers level of like, hey, you're getting checked. Like we're getting ready for war. You're getting checked because it's gonna hurt a little bit, but you're gonna get better to be able to deal with that.
Yeah. It's like, is your sword sharp? Is your shield polished? Are your shoes tied?
Yeah. Have you been practicing mentally, spiritually, all that stuff? So that's why I thought this is a great way to end it.
No, I love it.
Because the aging arborist, a lot of people do fall into like, oh, it's for the, older. And it's like, no. You're clocked. The time's ticking as soon as you're in. And then.
Yeah, you clocked in and now we're working.
Yeah, we're working. Yeah. So I just felt like an announcement from both of us on that is a good way to do it. And embrace the suck.
I love it.
You gotta.
Definitely. 100%. It's been good. This has been a blast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's good to kind of get some of that out. The idea is like, it's hard for me. Like we did a panel talk at the Garden State Tree the one year and I did share a little bit, but I so much enjoy the facilitator role.
Yeah, sure.
That I probably would have just kept putting this off. And then
I know you would. That's what I said. No, you're doing it.
And then we thought about guests, and I'm just like, you know what? Like, all right, I know we got somebody next month, and then someone after that, and like, okay, so you know what? Let's just pause, and then realize like, that's weird. It's a year, and I didn't plan it that way. But it's kind of like the timing is perfect.
I think it's great. Yeah.
So
So with that being said, I think that was excellent.
Appreciate it.
Didn't get you. I got some emotion out of you, so that's awesome. You know what I mean? Like that's what we want.
I'm surprised that's all you got.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing it. A deep dive because, like I said, I know you, right? I know your story. I know you decent enough that I want the listeners that are listening to our podcast to also hear yours as well, not just mine.
No, I appreciate it for sure.
So definitely for that, and. Now, I'll let you finish it off, but basically, thank you for listening. It's Paul Beester. Check it out, episode 12. We finally made it into 1 year. Maybe a little bit, I would say encouragement, but maybe if you guys can send more messages, you give us some insight, ideas, topics, conversations, stuff that we can tap into. Maybe we can, let's say the next guest, we'll have like a surprise topic to touch on with them. Mm-hmm. Send them our way, and then there's something that we can play with.
Cool. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Appreciate it. Episode 12. Over and out.
Yeah.